has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
The influx of the refugees into our region extends beyond Garu. That means you have refugees found in Boku Central, in Binduri, in Tempani, in Pusuga. We have over 4,000 people in the 4 communities that I mentioned. Kuguri has about 1,700. That was a registration that was being done by the assemblyman of the area. And then I'm told that there are some of them, especially the Fulani heads, are even avoiding the registration. When they call them for registration, they don't want to come because they are avoiding them. And as a result, the number that is mentioned about the Kuguri communities is far greater than that. Mwadugu community, Songo community, Denugu, the numbers are higher, which means that roughly you can think of about 4,000 to 5,000 people in the area. And you know, these are people who have come in. We do not know their identity. And the insurgents or the jihadis that who are attacking communities and killing people in the northern Burkina, we don't know who they are. And
good morning to you, and thank you very much for choosing Pan-African Television. We are broadcasting live from the Kwame Nkrumah studio here at Pan-African Television at Abilingpe. And we're bringing to you the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Yeah, we say it as it is, no matter who is involved in it, and we'll leave you. Radio station. Also indicate. Well, we'll be right back. Give us a moment.
He has labored, he has suffered.
There was a meeting on 1st November 2022, and all the parties committed to sending written arguments. GRA did not submit, the Ministry of Finance did not submit, and yet the Attorney General went ahead to issue this lopsided legal opinion, which strengthens the hands of West Blue and Gabi in this matter. We are of the firm opinion that the conduct of the Attorney General in this matter has not been a conduct that is worthy of emulation. It appears that he has been manipulated and controlled by the president's cousin, who is clearly engaged in influence peddling. And we are saying enough is enough.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead.
Welcome back to the Kwame Nkrumah studio, where we are bringing to you the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. And I was going to indicate to you that you can join us on social media via Facebook. You can use the Pan-African Television page. That's the page on which you can find us on. We're broadcasting live there. We are also broadcasting on YouTube, Pan-African TV. You can get to watch us. When you're watching us, use the comment section and share a word or two about what you think about the topics we'll be discussing today. This week has been the media budget week. The government had no option. They had to do the media budget review on Monday, else they would have violated the Constitution. So it was done. The finance minister's message, we are turning the corner. Yes, we are turning the corner, even though he has lowered every other target they set in the main budget. When it was read in 2022, he says Ghana is turning the corner. We'll be discussing the media budget review. We'll also discuss the MPP race, because the president has indicated clearly, I don't support anybody. There are people around me who I know for sure are strongly in favor of one candidate. Personally, Nana Akufo-Addo, I don't support anybody in the race for flag bearer to succeed me. The person who leads the party into the 2024 elections, I have no favorites. President Akufo-Addo has been talking about that. Plus, we'll be talking about that race and matters arising, because it is this month that the Super Delegates Conference will be held. But there's a much more important issue that we need to start with. We cannot ignore, because tensions, it's raising tensions within the sub-region, and there are some other African patriots, compatriots who have joined, and they are making comments on what has been done by ECOWAS. Some leaders of ECOWAS who've decided that will place sanctions on Niger, where a coup recently happened. They are insisting that the president who was overthrown should be reinstated, else sanctions will apply. And if those things are not, if he is not reinstated within a week, and I think that will be this Sunday, they will attack Niger. And yesterday I was reading a story that suggests that the president of Nigeria, who is the chairman of ECOWAS, is speaking to his Senate to back him with troops to carry out that threat. But already there are some countries that are telling them, not a good idea, don't go there. And the socialist movement of Ghana calls it a strategic mistake to go in the direction. So we'll be talking about that, because the sub-region is very, very important. Whatever happens in the sub-region will directly come to us. So we have to be worried when security is threatened in the manner in which it is being done. Well, that is where we are starting from. And that's the discussion we'll be having this morning. The three issues are the issues we'll be discussing, but we must start from the issue in Niger and the threats of ECOWAS. Like I said, join us. We have on the screen a number you can use to share your thoughts via text, via WhatsApp. We'll read it as we go along in the show. Let me introduce my panel for today. We are lucky to be joined today for this discussion, especially has to do with the sub-region, by Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. He's joined us this morning. They've been very strong in condemning ECOWAS' stance on the Niger coup. We'll come to him for his thoughts. But before that, Solomon Owusu is a member of the MPP's communication team. He has joined us in studio as a member of our panel. We are joined for the very first time by Abdallah Abubakar, who is a former Northern Regional Minister. The last time he was minister, the Northern region was one region. Now it's just 3 different regions. He finds himself in Northeast. He has joined us. He's also the parliamentary candidate of the NDC in Wale Wale, Dr. Baumier's constituency. And then we'll be joined, and the panel will be completed by Gabriela Tete, who is the Central Regional Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress. That's our panel for today to discuss the issues that we've tabled. Like I said, we have to start from Niger. And this morning, I'll start with Mr. Solomon Owusu on this issue. Solo, good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Sena. Nice to be here this morning. And good morning to Mr. Pratt, who was firing from all around the globe. I enjoyed your delivery in South Africa. That was a powerful one. And to Honorable, this is the first time we are meeting on set. Good morning, and good morning to your cherished viewers. Sena, coup in West African sub-region, especially Sahelian region, if care is not taken, will have a devastating effect on the rest of the sub-Saharan region of Africa. You see, this whole thing must be traced to why we are where we are today, and it's very important. Either to that region has been stabilized by the fact that Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, was at post, and that he was making sure that insurgencies were reduced. Until one fine morning, we woke up and realized that the West, led by the US and its allies, decided to forcibly go and overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. In fact, they didn't just overthrow him, they killed him as well. And that was when I gave up on the African Union, as well as all the other sub-regional groupings we have, because none of the bodies sought to go to the aid of Muammar Gaddafi, who was an African. And it is interesting that the U.S. used someone who prided himself as an African, someone with an African blood, Barack Obama, to lead that very heinous crime against humanity. So ever since Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown, you know, guns and ammunition have found its way into the hands of people who hitherto wouldn't have gotten access to these guns, because they were just giving guns to Libyans to go and kill Muammar Gaddafi. And afterwards, there wasn't any proper strategy to retrieve all these ammunitions that found its way into the hands of individuals that did not have to get it. And since then, they say the devil finds work for the idle hand. The people have guns in Libya. They were having economic challenges. So it was very easy for them to sell these ammunitions to those in the Sahelian regions, who are also grappling with issues of unemployment and various economic hardships. And that is why you see that kind of instability that is in the Sahelian region. Since 1950, Sena, the world has witnessed close to 487 coups d'etats. And of that figure, 215 has taken place in Africa. 109 has been successful, with the rest not being successful. But you see, there is a peculiar circumstance with what is happening in the last 10 years. That whereas coup d'etats has reduced drastically in our sub-region, especially in West Africa, the success rate has been almost 100%. Now, when they decide to make coup, they succeed. Either two, you can have 10 coups. Ghana, for instance, has had about 10 coups. Only 5 succeeded. You can talk about Sudan having about 17, and only close to 8 succeeded. But this time around, when they make the attempt, they succeed. But you see, there is a correlationship between coup d'etats in any way and economic development. And this is where I draw my attention to the coup makers. Look, under no circumstance must we entertain military officials taking over power. If you are a military officer and feel strongly about your visions and plans for any country, the reasonable thing you do is to remove your military uniform, go and form or join a political party, fight to lead that political party, go and sell your message to the good people of your country, win and come and lead the country. Don't use the shortcut. Don't use the shortcut. You can start from Burkina Faso. Between 2020 to 2022, we have had about 2 coups. When Damiba, that colonel, was removing Christian Kabore, what did he say? He said he was embarking on that coup d'etat because jihadists were taking over that country. In fact, at the time he was taking over, the jihadists are taking about 13 or 15% of the entire land of Burkina Faso. But when he, as a military officer who was supposed to defend the territorial integrity of the country, could not do that and put the blame on a certain president and took over, the jihadists within a matter of 4 months are taking 40% of Burkina Faso. And that is what angered Traoré, who is now the leader of the country, to also do a coup to take over from Damiba, yes. Go to Burkina Faso today, the same issues exist. So, did we go or did we come? It tells you that the real intentions of these coup makers is not to better anybody's life, but rather to enrich themselves. Because if you check the GDP of Burkina Faso ever since Christian Kabore was removed, and you just suppose what is happening today, nothing has happened. It is the same situation. So the promise or the assurance that you gave to the good people of Burkina that you were coming to better their lives, what has happened? Go to Mali. Assimi Goïta took over from Keita in 2020 after election standoff. Now, you took over because there was confusion in the country and that you wanted to restore sanity. You did, you formed, there was a transitional government that was formed. And he says because the transitional government that was formed, 2 army generals were deposed. Apparently because they didn't fit the position, he did another coup. And has entrenched himself. Initially he said he was going to return the country to civilian rule in 2 years. Now they are talking about 5 years. So is it not to enrich himself? Is it not to enrich himself? When poverty, when you go to Mali, poverty, you meet poverty face to face. You have shake hands with poverty. And he has no clear-cut plan. Nombo also came under that flamboyance. Guinea is going to resurrect, going to do all things. The GDP of the country, the same systems are still in place. Nothing has changed. Then you go to Niger. Niger, all of us thought, had returned to the path of democratic rule after Issoufou had spent 10 years on the seat, and per their constitution, he had no business being in power, and left it to Bazoum. If you have any problem with Bazoum, you have to just use the democratic principles enshrined in the constitution of Niger to do that, and not as a head of the presidential guard, who by extension is part of the government, just decide to take him out. As we speak, yesterday when I touched base with my people in Niger, food prices have already doubled because it's a landlocked country. Most of their food comes through the Benin port. They have closed their borders, so the limited amount of food available in Niger is what everyone is competing for. The issue of demand and supply. And so prices are already going up. The military leader is there, that is Chiani is there, saying he's going to better the lives of the people. But right now, food prices are going up. Are you bettering their lives? And that is why I believe the whole essence of our being as a continent must be centered on building strong institutions. The only way we can get out of any problem we have is to build institutions that are strong, that are capable of withstanding any shocks, and not to build personality cults. Because the person that you are hero worshipping will not be there tomorrow, but the institutions will be there. The Ghana Education Service will be there, but the minister who is there today will not be there tomorrow. The Ghana Armed Forces will be there, but the Chief of Defense Staff who is there today will not be there tomorrow. The Minister of Defense will not be there tomorrow. The Police Service will be there today and tomorrow, but its IGP and the Minister of Interior will not be there tomorrow. So at all material time, you must build strong institutions. And that is what we are lacking as a continent. Servants are always turned masters. We vote for people who then lord themselves onto us. We worship them. If you vote for a president, it's supposed to be the chief public servant. Emphasis is on servant. How can a servant then turn into a master? How can a servant then turn into a master? Now, to deal with all this, it's very easy for every coup maker to come at the back of unemployment, poverty, and so on and so forth. That is why Africa must take its unionization very serious. Unless until we all come together as a continent and pool resources together, Sena, it will be the same old story. How can Ghana, with a 30 million population, with a GDP of less than 100 billion, go into any meaningful negotiations and have a better outcome? Can you compare that one with the entire Africa with a GDP of about 3 trillion going into a negotiation as a body and fighting our ways? Because if for nothing at all, we have a population of about 1.2 billion backing us. What is so difficult that we cannot do things together? What is so difficult? Our division is inures to the benefit of the West. So you listen to Chiani, he's saying uranium is in abundance in Niger. And that is why France is so much interested in the country. And that a country that has so much deposit of uranium, only about 5% of its population enjoys electricity. Whereas France has a lot of electricity. But who caused them? It is not about your coup d'etat. Because if you are even left today as Chiani to lead the country, you cannot overnight turn the uranium into electricity. It calls for investment. And the investment under the current architecture of this world is controlled by the Western world. Go to IMF today, and if you don't take it, they will let you write your great-grandfather's history before you get the money. Whereas as Africans, we could pool all these resources together. Now, the other side that is so frightening, Sena, is the gradual shifting of the NATO war with Russia into our sub-region. And it's very serious. We risk, by virtue of these takeovers, bringing that bogus war onto our turf. You check Burkina, you check Guinea, you check Niger, and even Chad. All of them are burning the flags of France. They say they don't want to see France in their territory, on their land, even to the extent that Mali has sacked all French troops, or the French troops in Mali. Niger is also doing the same. And you know, France has a huge interest in these Francophone countries. In fact, the prosperity of France is as a result of the dampness of Francophone Africa. We have given them all their resources to the extent that every money is kept at their central bank. So that when they need money to even go and buy toothpick, they have to write to that young man in France to okay it for them. So now they want freedom. But you see, it comes back to we working together. Mali alone cannot fight the might of France. And when you are fighting against the might of France, you are not fighting against only France. Remember, NATO has said when you touch one of their members, you have touched all. So when you touch France, you are not only touching France, you are touching US, Britain, and all the allies within the NATO. And when they say they don't want to see France in their country, they are calling for Russia into their country. And we understand their Wagner forces are also in there. So what is going to happen is that NATO will see it as a battle for the soul of these resources, i.e. backing France to fight Russia on our turf or on our territory. And that is why we must be very, very tactical. And that is why I agree with Socialist Movement of Ghana when they say ECOWAS must take a second look at how they want to deal with the situation in Niger. Yes, nobody wants coup, but in your bid to also resolve the matter, you don't, well, only mathematics, they say negative, negative is positive. But in human situations, it's not negative, negative, that's positive. You can use dialogue to achieve the very thing that you are talking about. Let's go into it and look at the real issues. ECOWAS itself has a problem. It was established in 1975 to integrate our sub-region. The first question ECOWAS itself must ask is whether or not the number of times they have attended ECOWAS heads of authority meetings in Abuja and other places, we have been able to make a headway. As we speak, if you are moving from Ghana to Togo, it's more difficult than moving from Ghana to London. Barriers all over. ECOWAS said, as part of its objective, to have a common monetary zone, a common currency. What has happened to the WAMI? We said we were going to have joint military standing force. What has happened to it? So the very objectives of ECOWAS has not been met. And you that are so disorganized cannot all of a sudden behave as in such a manner to claim that you are organized to go and advise a lot of people. ECOWAS calls for credible elections. As we speak, the head of ECOWAS itself, Bola Tinubu, is facing election petition. has been accused of rigging elections. So you yourself, you are not 100% sure of your legitimacy. That is why you need to take an introspection, sit back, analyze holistically what the real issue is, so that together as a sub-region, we can fight it. What is happening in Niger is further going to disturb our economy. There are a huge Nigerian population in Ghana. Already our infrastructure is stretched to the limit. And so it is in the interest of Ghana that peace reigns there. And this is where I want to call on the new military leader, Omar Chiani, to also look at what he has done together with men, whether it will inure to the benefit of Niger. Already tensions are rising. But so far no blood has been shed. It will be on his head should any blood be shed. After all, what's the name? Bazoum came to power in 2021, and he has a 5 years mandate. If for any reason corruption allegations could be proven, if for any reason he has done something that goes contrary to the Constitution of Niger, use the processes to deal with him, rather than this shortcut, palace coup, and so on and so forth. And that when it is done, Sena, Africa will make a headway. I do not support this coup, no matter the circumstance. And to the young Ghanaians, you know we have a young Ghanaian population. On your platform, most often you hear people send text messages. We will support coup, we will support coup. I wish they had a brother or a sister or a friend in Niger, Niamey, for him or her to tell them what currently is happening there. A bag of rice, that probably you will be buying at 10 cedis. Now they are buying at 30 cedis. Already you were complaining of the 10 cedis. Because of the coup d'etat, it's gone to 30 cedis. So when you are wishing for something, be careful what you wish for. We must always respect our constitution. And that is where I'll end my submission.
Thank you very much, Solomon Owusu. Well, we're broadcasting live from the Kwame Nkrumah studio here at Pan-African Television, where, as you can see, we bring you Alhaji and Alhaji. Let me do a few messages that you're sending to us. This one from Asanko in Santa Maria says, ECOWAS members must be serious and stop the joke by thinking of sending troops to Niger, because that decision may rather escalate the problem. They should rather do a research and find out why so many coup d'etats take place in the region. Sanko sent that from Santa Maria. This one, okay, so this is coming from, says, if Nigeria thinks it has the military might, they should go and conquer the troublesome Boko Haram for its people to have peace. It is not Niger. Thank you for that message. Then this one says, Nigeria, the unstable basket of West Africa, wants to lead ECOWAS into a military action against Niger. Nigeria, a nation wrecked by banditry, kidnappings, Boko Haram, and secession movements, wants to lead a military venture outside its porous borders. Senegal, with its own political chaos, is intent on joining them. These are the actions of a black colonialist political class, vassals of the US, France, and the UK, seeking to protect Western imperialism, neocolonialism, and neocolonialism. Truly, it is as the proverb says. And then he writes it, and I think this is Swahili. He whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. Thank you for that message. A few more messages. This is Ayuba Oseini from Tumu in the Upper West region. Says, violence begets violence. There's no need for ECOWAS to attack Niger. When two elephants fight, the grass suffer. Dialogue can solve the problems in Niger amicably. Any attack on Niger will lead this power crisis to a different pedestal. Hashtag Alhaji and Alhaji. Thank you for that message. This one says, best program ever. I'm enjoying your discussions. My regards to my mentor and Dad Honorable Abuba. Thank you, Hafiz, for sending that message. This one from Karim Hudu. We are getting a lot of interest in Wale Wale because of the presence of Honorable Abuba. South African leaders must stop the corruption to stop the military takeovers. African governments are corrupt, especially Ghana. Karim sent that. Thank you, Karim, for that message. There's Morgan in Denu, who says a good morning. So now, do I hear Solo talking about democracy? It's a pity. We're here in this country when our tyrant president makes a comment that he is going to hand over power to an MPP candidate, and you think that's a funny comment, right? That is Morgan who sent that from Denu. There's also Afashani who is sending this from Wale. He says, good morning from the good people of, the good people of Wale are proud of Nombo Abuba because of the tremendous development projects you implemented during your short term as Northern Regional Minister. The good people of Wale Constituency will reward your good efforts by massively voting for you as our MP in the next election. So obviously there's a lot of interest from Wale. So I bring in Nombo. Good morning.
Good morning, Sena. Let me first of all also say good morning to your listeners out there, both online and on set. Honorable, you mentioned, rightly said it, we've met for the first time, and I think this is a pleasure. Your submissions, I think, have been very critical insights, and I'm very sure, being in your company, I'm going to get the opportunity to learn and sharpen my skills in this matter. Above all, senior comrade, Kwesi Pratt, to be here with him, in fact, is one of the best things that would have happened to me today. I'm really very grateful. On the issue of the coup in Niger, the situation in West Africa and in Africa with regards to the occurrence of coups is a mixed bag of both political, economic, and then imperialist interests that are interplaying in Africa and putting us in this difficulty. I remember in one of my courses somewhere when I was doing development, there was this issue about development being positively correlated with democracy. And that it is a normal thing that when countries practice democracy, it gives them the opportunity to embark on very effective development agenda. What do we see in Africa? The governments we have in most of the African countries and in West Africa, they have the sovereignty relies on the people, and these people, through a social contract, have given a mandate to a group of people to lead the economies. And if we ask ourselves the question, what is it that we want out of the democracy that we all yearn for? It's all about development. And this development, it is something that drags us to the conversation about the well-being of people who are governed. So my first submission is that our problem in the sub-region, and perhaps in the whole of Africa, is because we have been forced by developed nations to accept democracy that we still have not understood. Democracy for us in Africa and most of the sub-region has only succeeded in helping us establish governments. And at the end, we have government without governance. Because government is all about being able to get a body responsible for the day-to-day administration of a state. But as to whether the government we have in place are actually pursuing programs and policies and exuding attitudes that will inure to an improvement in the well-being of the people, I dare say in most parts of West Africa and Africa, we don't have those governments existing. Our institutions, as far as democracy is concerned, most of the countries in West Africa and Africa are paying special attention to the institution responsible for organizing elections, electoral commission. So the democracy in Africa and in West Africa and Africa is basically about financing and establishing an institution that will organize elections. And post-elections, once we establish a government, the processes and the policies and the institution that has to be established to ensure that the ultimate objective of bettering the people's life, allowing the masses who have reposed confidence in government agents to be able to rule the country, at the end of the day, do not see any improvement in their dignity and living standards as well as welfare. So the question then is, what is government or governance if in the end it does not culminate in the improvement of the well-being of the people. And therefore, it is therefore not surprising that when the military takes arms against a constitutionally elected government, the very people who put the government in place should have been very angry enough and kick against the coup plotters. But what do we see? Every time it happens, as it happens in Guinea, happens in Burkina Faso, happens in Mali, and as recently as it has happened in Niger, you find the masses pouring into the street to hail the coup plotters. To what extent can we then judge that coup to be illegitimate when the coup has the support of the people? Because the very people who put the government in place have found, in their opinion, a better alternative to the deposed government. Every coup maker finds justification in the limitations and the failures of an existing government. As you rightly said, Honorable, the coup makers catalog 3 important factors as being responsible for the coup. The insecurity in the sub-region. They talked about worsening economic conditions. And above all, they talked about the issue of corruption. Should we be asking the rhetorical question that a corrupt government and a government that cannot secure security for its people and a government that cannot better the economic welfare of its people, to what extent can we describe such government as a legitimate government? Because a legitimate government is not just about being elected through proper electioneering process. A legitimate government is also about a government that delivers its mandate. And the mandate that has to be delivered in all purposes and intent can never end at how much public speeches we are able to deliver, but the core of it is to what extent are the people you govern experiencing dividends and better living conditions from the resources they have entrusted into your care as government. So, one of the key highlights of my submission this morning is to say that it is unfortunate coups are happening in the sub-region, but it is more unfortunate that our governments are not living up to expectation. Failure to live up to expectation becomes the breeding grounds for which this military, which unfortunately have a core mandate of protecting the democracy, they have the mandate to protect the territorial integrity of our nations, and yet the instrument of cohesion that has been given to them to be able to secure our democracy, those same instruments are being used against the vote of the people. Because when I say the vote of the people, I'm referring to the issues where a constitutionally elected government put in place by the people is removed. And instead of attracting the anger and the wrath of the people who voted that particular government, they rather receive public recommendations and support from the masses. Look, Africa. When I was preparing to come to this, I thought about Professor Alice Mazuri's 6 Paradoxes of Africa, where he captioned the whole speech by talking about paradise in decay, the Garden of Eden in decay. He referred to Africa as Garden of Eden, where we have all the resources. We are the cradle of civilization. And despite all these things we could leverage on to propel our continent into a giant in the global affairs of governance, those resources has rather become a curse. And the curse, in my opinion, comes from 2 levels. The failure of our government to conduct proper governance, and then the long hand of the exploitative hand of imperialists who sit kilometers and miles far away and yet have their eyes fixed on our resources 24/7. And they will do everything possible to sit far away and still enjoy the wealth of Africa. Honorable talked about the uranium. To what extent can the unfortunate situation of a country, a very small country in West Africa, that is one of the highest producers of uranium, together with other resources, happens to be the poorest country in the world, according to the UN Human Development Index. Niger is the poorest country in the world. And yet it is one of the producers of uranium, the greatest in Africa, in the world. The question now is, what happens to the proceeds that comes from the extraction of these materials? When I was reading about it, I got to realize that France, US, and all these countries have military bases in Niger. So when a coup happens in that particular area, it is not easy for you to decipher the source of the guns. So we are being equipped by these foreign gens because of a particular interest in whatever resources we have in our countries. And our leaders fail to realize that they are not accountable to any institution elsewhere except the people of the country that they govern. West African leaders, leaders in Africa, must see the situation in Niger, the situation in Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, as the sign on the wall of the trajectory that our democracy in Africa is proceeding to. The path is bleak. Today, the indiscipline of our government agents, our institutions, the wanton dissipation of public resources, the glaring show of opulence by people in power, in sharp contrast with the miserable living conditions of the people, if not checked, is what will feed into this series of military coup d'etats across the region. My concern about ECOWAS is that ECOWAS is made up of 15 countries within the sub-region. They say a house divided cannot stand. To what extent is ECOWAS going to be able to galvanize the buy-in, the support, the resource commitment of all the nations within West Africa to be able to stage a proper intervention in Niger? It was so exciting to hear a comment from one of our listeners who said the president of Nigeria must rather be interested in checking Boko Haram. For how long has Nigeria been battling with Boko Haram? And to what extent have they been successful in establishing sanity in northern Nigeria where Boko Haram operates from? ECOWAS must take action with caution, that they do not go into Niger to worsen the plight of the people by destabilizing the economy further. And therefore, I will urge anybody who has the influence and the power to sit around the boardroom to decide what happens as an intervention in Niger to rather prioritize diplomacy and dialogue rather than resorting to military might. After all, it is now existent. Nigeria itself has not been able to deal with its domestic uprisings. How much more being able to deal with Niger in a context in which Niger seems, the military junta in Niger seems to be courting support and attention from other big powers who are willing and ready to be able to support the military junta in Niger to maintain the status quo as it is now. Let's talk about how military things operate. There are sanctions. And this sanction that has been placed, Benin was quick to say that the oil pipeline between Niger and Benin will not be affected by the sanctions that have been imposed. So you see that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Senegal, Mali has declared support for the military junta. Burkina has declared support for the military junta. And yet these are the countries that borders Niger. If you could ring fence Niger as a nation, lock all the borders around Niger, and stop the infiltration of arms into Niger for the use of this military junta, perhaps military action could work. But here is the case: the borders in other parts, including Burkina Faso and that of the other countries, will still be open, and the military junta can get whatever supplies they need to be able to take action. Russia feels diplomacy is the best way to go. US, France think that military and force should be applied. Therefore, this particular military junta in Niger, in my opinion, is no longer a local matter. It's not the globalization of a war. It's globalization of war. That somebody in Russia, somebody in America, somebody in France will be ready to pump in a lot of resources in order to pursue an imperialist interest in Niger. Unfortunately, at the bottom of every scale, of every matter in this conversation, at the bottom of it is the poor Nigerian who is struggling to put food on the table. The situation in Niger, honestly, that led to the war, the coup, is not anything different from many of the countries in West Africa and in Africa. We've gone through democracy, which is only effective at the level of elections. But we've succeeded in electing dictators whose showmanship and big manship has trumped every institution of government that should work in a way that will let the people feel satisfied that after all we've put in a legitimate government. So, in fact, one of the other submissions that I want to make on this platform is to say that even though Ghana and some many other countries like Nigeria and all those succeed in holding what people may want to describe as free and fair elections, the outcome of such elections is usually a dictator. And this dictatorship is as a result of we reposing on a particular individual elected as a president or a prime minister unfettered authority and power to be able to trample over state institutions that are powerless to act, and that will kowtow to the interests of such a leader, regardless of ethics and principles of governance. When these things happen, in my opinion, the way we are always quick to say that a constitutionally elected government has been toppled by a coup, a military, in my opinion, it is usually the military toppling a dictator, a constitutional dictator. And for me, there's no difference between a constitutional dictator and a military president, because they all seem to be acting based on decrees and wishful thinking and fanciful ideas of a particular powerful individual, to the complete neglect of the institutions, the state institutions that are supposed to work to get us to improve our living standards. Let's use ECOWAS as an example. How on earth can an organization established, you said in 1975? Yeah. How many years now? Almost 40-something years. We still do not have the institutions to deal with an old phenomenon like coups in West Africa. To what extent are we learning in our governance process? Starting from the coup with Nkrumah, which happened in 1966, with all the coups we've had in Ghana plus all the coups we've had in the rest of West Africa. To what extent have West African countries and nations learned from those unfortunate incidences of coup d'etat to have put measures in place to avert the happenings of these coups? Let me serve notice to the leadership of ECOWAS that the situation in West Africa today is far beyond knee-jerk and ad hoc response. There should have been purposeful planning, well-established institutions prepared with budget and resources. Today, our big brother, Nigeria, is the one talking to the Sena to allow. What if they don't allow? Even if they allow, can Nigeria alone lead successfully against Nigeria? Even when I was reading today, I got an interesting thing. Most of the French colonies have a pact, a military pact, an agreement as part of their colonial process with France. That at any point in time there is an aggression against any of these Francophone countries, it is an aggression against France. And aggression against France is aggression against NATO. Look at the chain of connections that can make available military accoutrements for the use of the military in Niger. And France is interested in also intervening militarily because I heard one of their leadership said it is only a legitimate and democratically elected government in Niger that can sever the military pact between them and France. So what it means is that an aggression against Niger is aggression against France. Some other countries elsewhere that might be interested in supporting the junta. So we are going to have a bloodbath in Niger if the choice is to use military and to use force. I still once again will want to call and urge leadership to prioritize the issue of diplomacy and dialogue in resolving the issue for the sake of the powerless and voiceless and the vulnerable people of Niger. ECOWAS should not be seen to be cherry chicken, or what do you call it, cherry picking, right? What happened when the coup occurred in Burkina Faso? To what extent did they involve and how much? When it happened in Mali, what happened? When it happened in Guinea, what happened? What is different about Niger? Why are they departing from their conventional way of doing things? Is there a bigger interest that is hidden? Or once again, our leadership are being pushed by a particular powerful state somewhere that has vested interest in the resources of Niger? Niger, a very poor country. Sometimes those of us in northern Ghana, we see people of Niger, we call them Alhaji people. They are Caucasians. You see them walking with children, even in Accra. When you go by the street in Accra, sometimes you see women with children who come to beg. Apparently from their complexion and everything, you know they are not Ghanaian. They are usually coming from Niger. Such a country is what is going through this situation. And the military activities in that particular area is going to cause more harm to the people of Niger rather than serving their interests.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Abuba. Before we go to Comrade Pratt, let me do, this message is on our WhatsApp platform. The so-called Democrats who, after exhausting their two-term mandate, manipulate the system to stay in power is the remote cause of resurgence of coup d'etat in Africa. ECOWAS looked on as Faure Gnassingbé of Togo, Alassane Ouattara of La Côte d'Ivoire, Alpha Condé of Guinea illegally manipulated the constitutions in their countries to stay in power beyond their mandated terms. ECOWAS is looking on for Macky Sall of Senegal to manipulate the country's constitution to stay in power beyond his mandate. As long as these manipulations continue with the double standards of ECOWAS, coups will continue to occur. Issa Adam sent us that one. This one is from Martins, is it Osasuye Iyamo, says Tinubu wants to use this to stay in power in Nigeria because he knows the court is going to kick him out. Bukari Abdul Rashid says, we are proud of you, Honorable Abuba, keep by his grace. Okay. There's a Sapiagbo who's joining us. I really admire the submission of the gentleman. Coup d'etats are not and should never be the solution to democratic misrule. Coup d'etats or military push tend to truncate both the democratic dispensation, economic and social cohesion. However, we have to situate the legitimacy or illegitimacy of the push in the response of the people on whose behalf the coup was staged. Why do the people often welcome coups when we claim coups are deleterious and tend to have negative effects on the economic welfare of the people? The reason is informed by the seemingly uncaring posture of political leaders in power. In Ghana, for example, many citizens can't afford 3 meals a day. Most roads are impassable. Schools don't have the necessary infrastructure. Healthcare provisions are in dire straits. Yet we see our leaders traveling in a convoy of VAs to the extent that President Kufuor even has a dedicated V8 vehicle to convey his majestic seats around the country. Therefore, a hungry nation will welcome coups due to the open and insulting opulence being displayed by the political caste. Thank you, Sapiago, for sending that. Collins Kwame Champon says we should stop blaming the West. Just recently, was in Ghana, how much money they found in the minister's house. A lower minister. This can never ever happen in the West. Blacks always love the blame game. We always put the wrong people in office. Thank you for sending that message. Denise Akwete says our francophone West African countries should learn from Ghana and give democracy a chance. Ghana at the moment is near hell, but not notwithstanding, our legs are still on the democratic gear. That said, even as we condemn coups of any form and shape, it is only proper that our leaders wake up from their self-imposed slumber graves and come to terms with the political, economic realities that become the breeding ground for coups. The corruption, nepotism, cronyism, narcissism, duplicity, and hypocrisy on the part of our ECOWAS leaders is incredibly amazing. And if this continues, we should wake up one day and see that the democratic clock of the region turned anti-clockwise with the consequences thereof. Shalom. Thank you, Dennis. There's Francis Gordon who says some West African countries should learn from Ghana and Nigeria, where many coups did not help. It is only democracy that has sustained Ghana and Nigeria to develop somehow. Governments should be accountable to the people in Africa. Greed is mostly what the government is, and military interventions is the order of the day. Cedric L. Sebek joins us, says, I think honorable solution to this coup about the borders closure is a very good initiative to be adopted by ECOWAS, but they think they know too much, yet the leaders in West Africa, they are leading West Africa into a ditch. Thank you for that message. Rosemary Nylander says, I love that constitutional dictator. They said the term you use, she loves it. Ghana has not been spared from these elected dictators. Ibrahim Barry says ECOWAS should help Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger to fight against the terrorists and bring sanity and security back to this country. Israel Bina says, Sena, we don't need coup in Ghana, because after coup and stabilization of the country, and if you go back to the democratic coup, the same politicians will make a U-turn to come and start stealing the resources again. There's Abdurrahman Yakubu who says, I am pleased to see Honorable Abuba, a brother, deliver beautifully. More power to his elbow. There's Yaya Achilo says, African leaders are taking things for granted, and they are not interested in anything about the people who gave them mandate to govern. So at the moment, we need to be careful about the current developments in our countries. Who takes the law into their own hands by staging a coup? Let me go and read. This was forwarded to me by Mr. Officer Free Ankara. And it says, the president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, has asked the Senate to support military intervention in Niger. Yeah, he has sent the letter and gone for the reading. They are sleeping into a bad scenario. I'm very sure the West promised him some money. They probably advanced some to him already. As the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, has raised the readiness level of the armed forces to a state of war. Of course, Tinubu himself is loitering around for legitimacy and may be part of a bargain. Chad has second confirmed that it will stay out of any intervention whatsoever. Many of the battalion groupings in Ghana were seen in different bases from place to place. The Ghana team in Abuja has been part of the intervention planning. Is Parliament monitoring this? So that is forwarded to me. Comrade.
Well, first of all, there have been many developments since ECOWAS leaders embarked on the reckless path of threatening Niger with a possible invasion. There have been many, many interesting developments. One is that it appears that Benin is not following the ECOWAS path. Because as of yesterday, Benin had opened its borders with Niger, a clear indication that it is not following the sanctions regime which was announced by the ECOWAS leadership. Then yesterday, the president of Liberia actually made a statement to the effect that West African leaders have no moral authority to intervene in Niger. Indeed, according to the president of Liberia, what has been happening in the West African sub-region is nothing but institutionalized coup d'etats. He makes a distinction between military coup d'etats and what he calls institutional coup d'etats. When he describes institutional coup d'etats as occurrences which enable sitting head of states to violate the constitution with impunity, to extend their term limits from 2 to 3 and so on. He says West African leaders have been looking on as these so-called democratic dictators violate national constitutions. When action is taken to correct this, then they wake up all of a sudden. Look around the West African sub-region. Look around. Right now, as we speak, one of the West African leaders, Macky Sall, is behaving worse than a bull in a china shop, arresting innocent citizens, dumping them in prison, firing tear gas on protesting people and so on. West African leaders have not seen these clear violations of the rights of the people of Senegal. He's managed to put his only viable opponent in prison and so on. West African leaders are not complaining. Now, at a certain point, Islamic insurgents had managed to seize more than 50% of the land territory of Burkina Faso. West African leaders were not worried. As far as West African leaders were concerned, that was democracy. More than 50% of the land territory of Burkina Faso had been seized by Islamic insurgents. West African leaders were not worried at all. West African leaders looked on as the Malian president behaved with impunity, shooting into demonstrators, arresting his opponents, and so on. They looked on. They were quite comfortable with that. They looked on as the president in Guinea continued to misbehave. He completely was misbehaving. They had no difficulty with that. But as soon as the military intervened to stop the killing and to stop the wanton destruction of life and property, West African leaders wake up. And they wake up, and what they want to do is to reinstate these bankrupt, useless leaders who were clearly acting against the interests of their people and violating their national constitutions. What is wrong with these West African leaders? I can imagine that when they met in Abuja to take this reckless decision, they were scared to the marrow, all of them. They acted out of fear of the consequences of their own actions, fear of the consequences of their misrule, fear of the consequences that the masses in their country will rise up against them. And somehow, these West African leaders believed that if they could send soldiers to Niger and reverse the situation, it would put the fear of God in others who want to rebel against neo-colonial dictators. They are lying. They are lying. They don't understand the West African people. They have not come to appreciate the difficulties of the West African people, the difficulties that the West African people are facing. This morning, we've received some very queer text messages, strange text messages, that democracy has delivered in Ghana and elsewhere. What did democracy deliver in Ghana? In a period of 2 years, what democracy has delivered is that prices of food have gone up by 300%. That is what democracy has delivered in Ghana. What has democracy delivered in Ghana? In the last elections, 9 people died. There has been no effort to find out those who killed them and to punish those who killed them. That is what democracy has delivered in Ghana. What democracy has delivered in Ghana is a Yawasu West Wagon. And when I go to a Yawasu West Wagon, and I see the people who have lost their limbs, people who can no longer work in their lives, people who have lost their eyes and so on, I begin to wonder whether this is what democracy is about. And I sit back and say, Ayawasu West Wagon has been investigated by some of the most eminent citizens of our country. The Committee of Inquiry was chaired by no other than Justice Emil Short, who used to chair the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Had a former Inspector General of Police as member. A sitting Supreme Court judge was a member. What happened to the Ayawasu West Wagon investigations and the report? Is that what democracy is supposed to deliver? I don't know. And then we are talking about our economic conditions. After 19 years, and I mean 19 years, of the rule of Mr. Rawlings and his PNDC, in 2000, when they had to hand over, money supply had gone up to 48%. Money supply. Inflation was hovering around 50%. I hope you understand what I'm saying. That, at least the last 8 years of that regime, of the 19 years regime, was under this so-called democracy. What did it deliver? Today, in Ghana, look at the economic indicators. Look at the economic indicators. We just had the mid-year budget review. Look at the economic indicators. Inflation has jumped past the 40% mark. As a matter of fact, it went beyond the 50% mark. Look at the rate of depreciation of the cedi. Today, as we sit in the studio, we will come to that. Sanitary pads are described by our government as luxury goods and therefore subjected to extraordinary taxation. This is what democracy has delivered for us. You understand? We are running a near bankrupt nation. We are running a nation in which you need 128% of total national revenue in order to cater for 3 line items: debt repayment, debt servicing, and public sector emoluments. Is this what democracy has delivered for us? All the craving about democracy and its dividends and so on, are these the dividends of democracy? I just wonder. You understand? Now, my brothers and so, I am not calling for a coup d'etat in Ghana tomorrow morning. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying that for democracy to be sustainable, it needs to deliver. Democracy has to deliver. If democracy is not going to improve our access to social services like education, like health, like housing, like employment, what is the value of democracy? What is the value of democracy if it is not able to deliver, improve our access to social services? Now, again, when we talk about democracy in Ghana and elsewhere in West Africa, I just wonder, what is happening? What is democratic about it? You have an election. Election results are declared 4 times. Each time the result is declared, the figures are different from the other one. Is that our idea of what democracy is? My brother, who doesn't know that democracy, or the so-called democracy, has actually become a circus of vote buying, of bribery, of suspicions of judicial recklessness? Who doesn't know that elections in our circumstances has become nothing more than the promotion of ethnic strife and so on? Is this democracy? Why? You go for an election, we all hear the stories of sharing of vehicles, of motorbikes, of tractors, and so on. Is that democracy, the democracy we are supposed to protect? I just wonder, this democracy, what is it? We have to be clear what kind of democracy we want to build. Because the kind of democracy we are seeing in West Africa today is not the kind of democracy that any soldier should spend his life protecting. At all. Why? Recently, we went through an election, primaries. In one constituency, we heard of the father of a candidate, not the candidate himself or herself, I'm being careful, distributing cars to buy votes for his son or his daughter. All of you know that story. That is your democracy. That is our democracy in West Africa, for which we are going to send people's husbands, people's wives, people's children, people's uncles to go and die for in Niger. What's wrong with us? I mean, incredible. Why? Take Nigeria, which is leading the charge. Nigeria has been riddled with the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast for how many years? You can't fight Boko Haram. You've allowed your citizens to be kidnapped, to be killed, to be molested. Whole villages have been ransacked by Boko Haram. You can't deal with Boko Haram. You are going to move your soldiers to go into Niger to go and fight, to impose a president on Niger. Are you crazy? It's unbelievable. You can't fight Boko Haram. Eh? Boko Haram is already too much for you. Boko Haram is beating you to the ground in the northeast. And then you run away from Boko Haram. You hold a meeting in Abuja to prepare to go and wage war on Niger. What are you taking the people of Nigeria for? Are you mad? Are you crazy? You can't fight Boko Haram. Boko Haram, you can't fight them. They don't have any aircrafts. I haven't heard of Boko Haram using armored vehicles and so on. They are not using drones and they are beating you. And you say, no, as for Boko Haram, we can forget them. Go to Niger and fight a regular army. Better armed than Boko Haram and so on. What is that? Unbelievable. When the insurgents were attacking Burkina Faso, they were attacking Mali, they were attacking Guinea, they've attacked Togo, they've attacked Benin. West African leaders didn't care. They didn't care. In Ghana, the intelligence reports indicate that these insurgents who are terrorizing Burkina Faso and others have actually entered Ghana. I'm not the one saying it. The intelligence reports, those that were made public, and that they've come as far down as below Tamale. You are not worried about that. You want to go and fight in Niger. What kind of leaders do we have in West Africa? What kind of leaders do we have in West Africa? I can't believe it. You understand? In any case, it's important for us to ask the question, who benefits from an intervention in Niger? Clearly, the people of West Africa will not benefit from an intervention in Niger. The principal beneficiary of any such intervention is France. Number one, France. Generally, the Western Alliance, they are going to benefit from this reckless intervention in Niger. If you go to France today, 1 out of 3 electric bulbs are lighted with resources from Niger. 1 out of 3. The uranium in Niger lights 1 out of 3 bulbs in France. Now, we should be asking, what is Niger getting in return? Niger is supposed to be the second poorest country in the world, in spite of the fact that it has abundant uranium resources and gold, huge gold deposits and so on. All of that goes to benefit France. The new regime in Niger has suspended all shipments of uranium and gold to France. That's one step forward. One major step forward for the people of Niger. You don't want this. You want to go and attack the regime and open Niger up so that their natural resources will be exploited for the benefit of France. And you call that democracy? Are you mad? Are you mad? Look at the situation in all the French-speaking countries in Africa. All the French-speaking countries in Africa. All of them are compelled to place their foreign reserves in the Central Bank of France. All of them, without exception. The result of this is that the French-speaking countries are borrowing their own money and paying interest on their own money. And West African leaders are not concerned about this. For 20 years or more, they are talking about a West African monetary zone. It has never happened. They are not helping these French-speaking African states to free themselves from the economic stranglehold that France has imposed on them. Today, if neo-colonial rule over West African French-speaking countries stops, the French economy is in serious jeopardy. That is why France is all over the place. And West African leaders are comfortable with this. I wonder. One of the top military men in Niger gave an interview. I don't know if you guys have seen the video, in which he's saying that the French have been here claiming to be helping us to fight the insurgents. Anytime we locate the insurgents and we are ready to attack to kill them, we are ordered not to attack until France has given the clearance. I'm not the one saying it. Why? Why? The French came, or are ostensibly here, to fight insurgents. The insurgents are growing. In any case, what is the source of the insurgency in the Sahel, in West Africa? What is the source? All the security analysts and experts have claimed that the primary source is the overthrow of the Libyan regime, the Gaddafi regime. Who did that? It is the Western countries, led by the United States of America, Britain, and so on. They caused the instability in Libya, which has led to the massive insurgency in the West African sub-region. Now, is anybody telling me that the Western countries did not know that what is happening in West Africa will be a consequence of the destruction of the Gaddafi regime? Who will believe this, that they didn't know? That's exactly what they wanted to happen in West Africa. Now the consequences of their actions in Libya are maturing, and they say we should send our soldiers to go and die so that they can continue to control West Africa. First of all, I believe very strongly that West African soldiers are human beings. They are sensible. They know their interests and the interests of their countries. And that no West African soldier is ready to go and die a foolish death in Niger. And that those leaders who think that our soldiers are so stupid, they can just pack them into trucks and into airplanes to their death, they should look out. Our soldiers are not that foolish. They won't go. And there will be consequences for any reckless deployment of soldiers in Niger. You think that the soldiers, when they go to Niger, they are going to dance tango and come back? You are sending them to go and fight, to shoot and to be shot. And which soldier is going to go to Niger and shoot and be shot just because some God-forsaken head of state has been overthrown? They shouldn't make that mistake. They should never make that mistake, because it ain't going to happen. And if they insist on sending their soldiers to go and die in Niger, there will be consequences. Consequences, some of which we cannot predict, but they definitely will be severe consequences for all of us in West Africa. Look, the security situation in West Africa is very dire. As a result of the destabilization of the Libyan regime, today we have the Azawad Liberation Movement. The Azawad Liberation Movement is seeking to establish the independent Republic of the Azawad. And they are claiming many territories of West African countries for the establishment of the Azawad Republic. Mali is affected, Guinea is affected, Burkina is affected, many others are affected. Okay? So the Azawad insurgency is on and having repercussions on the economic conditions in many West African states. Then, of course, you have the Islamic insurgents also operating. And as I said earlier, these Islamic insurgents have come very close to us. Northern Togo has been attacked. Northern Benin has been attacked. In fact, La Côte d'Ivoire is in their sights, and Ghana is in their sights. And we are sitting here thinking about attacking Niger. That's what our leaders are thinking about, attacking Niger. Look, if you take Nigeria alone, Nigeria has half the population of West Africa. A lot of people don't know. The whole of West Africa, Nigeria alone, has half the population of West Africa. Nigerian population is estimated between 230 and 240 million people. Ghana is the second most populated country in West Africa with a population of only 31 or 32 million people. You understand? The crisis in Nigeria, as at now, threatens the whole of the sub-region. Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, low-intensity civil war in the Niger Delta, and a striving secessionist movement in the east. Nigeria is in crisis. Okay? That alone is problem enough. Our leaders, after having put on their thinking caps, and God knows what those thinking caps are made of, but they put on their thinking caps, and the only conclusion they could come to was to further destabilize the region by attacking Niger. These leaders, how did we end up with leaders like this? How did West Africa end up with dunderheads as leaders? I can't believe it. But be that as it may. You know, I said from the beginning that a few things have happened since the West African leaders made this extremely reckless declaration. Yesterday, the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement and said they would not sit down idly for their Western opponents to intervene in Niger. That's a clear warning. Clear warning. Now, you should take this warning together with the fact that Wagner is active in West Africa. And indeed, 3 days ago, I read some report about Wagner's preparations to enter Niger. And so, that should send a serious signal. Okay? Uranium is something over which the whole world has been fighting for years. The Congolese nationalist leader Patrice Lumumba now, based on the classified documents, we can say with certainty that he was overthrown because the West feared that Congolese uranium would get into the hands of their opponents if he continued to stay in power. One of the reasons why Patrice Lumumba was overthrown. He was not just overthrown. They overthrew him, they shot him, they dissolved his body in acid and removed his front teeth as souvenir. All because of uranium. So how do we think that the uranium deposits in Niger would not be subject to this contestation between the West and their opponents? Now Russia has made it very clear. They are not going to tolerate Britain, US, German, and so on, interventions in Niger. Now, do you know what? All of these West African countries who are talking about intervention, their economies are in shambles. On their own, they cannot raise the resources to sustain a war for one day. Okay? So they are hoping that they will go there and act as frontmen for the West. That's all they're hoping. They think that this war will be financed by the West. They think that they're going to get equipment to wage war on Niger from the West. They should listen to what the Russians are saying. Because there's a likelihood that we will turn Niger into the Ukraine, the new Ukraine. And I don't want that to happen in West Africa. I don't want that to happen anywhere in the world. And we better wake up. Now, why is Niger so important? Coup happened in Burkina Faso. They didn't invade Burkina Faso after 7 days. It happened in Mali. They didn't invade Mali after 7 days. Happened in Guinea. They didn't invade Guinea after 7 days. Why are they so keen on invading Niger after 7 days, the expiration of a 7-day ultimatum? You see, Niger is the base is the largest U.S. drone base in the world. Largest. Now, drone bases, what are they used for? Are they used to manufacture chocolates? Drone bases are used to prosecute war. And the drone base in Niger is so strategic for U.S. interest. You are going to send Corporal Owusu from Ghana. You are going to send Sergeant Mensa Poku from Ghana. You are going to send Lieutenant Niayi from Ghana to go and die in Niger so that the U.S. can maintain its drone base, its largest drone base in the world. Are you mad? And you think that Sergeant Mensa Poku is going to go and die to maintain the largest U.S. base in the world? Not in Africa, in the world. These leaders, Sena, these are your leaders. Where did you get them from? These are your leaders. These are your Sankwas leaders. Where did you get them from? So that is the strategic value of Niger. It may be the second poorest country in the world, and it shouldn't be. A country with the reserves of gold and uranium, a country which is home to the largest U.S. drone base in the world, should not be poor. If it is poor, then something is wrong. And if something is that wrong, it must be rectified. And I don't care how that situation is rectified. That situation, I don't care whether it is rectified through the barrel of the gun or through the ballot box. It must be rectified. That, for me, is the most important thing. Now, apart from the Russian statement, I don't know if you've read the statement from the government of Algeria. Clearly in opposition to any reckless move to invade Niger. I've already spoken about Benin. Benin is not imposing sanctions. It has already opened its borders. I've already spoken about Liberia. And the president of Liberia, I didn't know he was so sensible. He may be making other mistakes, but on this issue, he's proven to be one of the few sensible leaders in West Africa. He says, you sit down, you allow your colleagues to change constitutions, to extend their terms, and so on, to shoot people in the streets. You don't complain. When they're overthrown, you say you are angry, you are going to intervene. So these are some of the international reactions which are pouring in. And I think that our leaders had better wake up and listen. And then they are talking about democracy, those who have been elected. Show me one West African leader, one, just one, Tinubu included, Akufo-Addo included, all of them included, who is half as popular as the new military leader in Burkina Faso. These are popular leaders. Their popularity is bigger than the popularity of the so-called elected leaders. When ECOWAS sent a delegation to go to Mali, to persuade Mali to hand over, did you see the hundreds of thousands of people who poured out in the streets against ECOWAS and in support of their leadership? Tell me one West African leader who enjoys that level of popularity. I mean, recently, this young Burkinabe leader returned from the African-Russia summit. Did you see the mobilization who went to meet him at the airport? Did you see the crowd? Burkina Faso, small country with a small population. Did you see the hundreds of thousands who turned up to welcome him? And why were people so enthusiastic about that young leader? Because of the statements he made at that summit. Because he addressed the African problem. Because he made it clear that the neo-colonial capitalist party is going to sink all of us. And then we had better wake up. Why has he now earned the name the new Sankara? Why has he become so popular across the world? Show me one West African leader who is half as popular as that young man in Burkina Faso. None whatsoever. So when it comes to popular elections and so on, our West African leaders cannot pretend that they have the popularity that these coup leaders have. Look, I have seen coup regimes in this country. And as I was saying a few days ago, I have the advantage of age. You understand? I have the advantage of age. I'm an old man, okay? And because of my advantage of age, I've seen coup d'etats, all the successful coup d'etats, I saw them fili, gani. Indeed, the 1966 coup, I was in middle school, I think, and me and my friends moved from my Kutubabi home through Accra New Town, went all the way to Kanda, and I know what I saw. I saw the arrest of Nkrumah security men in the Abavana house at Abavana Junction in Pikval. I witnessed it with my own eyes. You see the New Town Truck Station, where it is now. They arrested some of Nkrumah security people, also from that white building, just adjacent to the filling station. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw how blood oozed out. I saw the molestation. I saw people being beaten for not demonstrating in support of the coup. I saw all with my own clear eyes. I went to Kanda that morning. You see those small story buildings dotted around opposite the Czech embassy. I saw soldiers arrive, point the muzzle of their nozzle of their guns, of the armored vehicles, shoot into those flats. And I saw fridges and television sets tumbling down. I saw people being killed and so on. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw General Champon's coup. Of course, it was bloodless. It was perhaps the most gentle coup that ever took place in our country. Okay? I saw it with my own eyes. I saw June 4th. I saw June 4th. And I saw our mothers. You know, I saw elderly women being stripped naked in the streets and their private parts being whipped, and so on. I saw it with my own eyes. Why? December 31st, I saw and experienced it. By the time it was over, 246 Ghanaians were missing. You can trace them. I signed a petition to the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice for investigations into the 246 disappeared. And the commission wrote back to say that if they started an investigation, it will open a Pandora's box. What did that mean? What did that mean? That it will open a Pandora's box. You know, so I've seen it all. And I don't wish that to happen to my people, to this country. I don't want ever to see a Kenya, a Hine again. I don't want to see a situation in which 246 people are missing. They cannot be traced. It cannot be investigated. I don't want to see that. You understand? I don't want to see all the atrocities which were committed by these coup regimes. I don't. But you see, if we don't want to see those atrocities revisited on us, then we must behave in ways which make it impossible for coups to take place. I don't think that in West Africa we are doing the things which will prevent the reoccurrence of coup d'etats. Everything we are doing in West Africa is to invite coup d'etats. That's what we are doing. We are doing everything against the Constitution, anything against the Constitution, anything which annoys people. You come from the New Patriotic Party. You are campaigning for Alhaji Martin. No problem with that. Why? When you speak against some of the things which are happening in your own internal party election, what is the response of the Bawumia team? If you don't like it, go and form your own party. What does that mean? This impunity, this arrogance. You, Bawumia, you joined this party in 2008. And your campaign team has the effrontery to tell foundation members of the party to leave the party and go and form their own party because your campaign team is doing things that they don't like. If you take this attitude into government, will you not be inviting coup d'etats? Ahmed Swali was killed. How many years ago? There has been no conclusive investigation about who killed Ahmed Swali. What are you telling us? Are you telling me, as a journalist like Ahmed Swali, to have confidence in this so-called democratic system, which cannot find out who kills me, who does not care whether journalists are killed or not killed? What will be the basis of that confidence? What will be the basis of that confidence in the so-called democratic system? So look, it is time to ask the important questions. It is time to ask those who claim to be our leaders to do the proper things. Why? The Constitution is clear. You can't engage in any foreign agreement. You can't sign foreign agreements without parliamentary approval. They are signing agreements without parliamentary approval. And they say it is democracy. Is that democracy? All over the West African sub-region, the U.S. has managed to establish its military bases all over the place. And Ghana is included. This defense agreement we signed with the U.S. enables the U.S. to use our territory for aggressive purposes. Okay? The French are everywhere. And so, the British are dotted all over the place, and so on. So, given the state of instability, economic suffering, and so on, don't you think that our people have a right to revolt? And you think that when our people decide to revolt, they're going to revolt through the ballot box? You are dreaming, daydreaming. No revolution has taken place through the ballot box before. Quote me anywhere. Show me one which occurred through the ballot box. So, rather than jump in solidarity with our reckless leaders, hell-bent on imposing recklessness on Niger, let the people of West Africa, in their trade unions, in their women's movements, in their youth and students' movements, in their popular movements, mobilize massively against the recklessness of our leaders. Let us tell them in the face that we will not be part of any senseless war in Niger or anywhere else on our continent. Our demands are clear. 1, the resources of West Africa must be owned by the people of West Africa. Simple and short. This is what every human society everywhere demands. The resources embedded in our soil belong to West Africans. We need to own them. 2, the resources must be exploited for the benefit of the peoples of West Africa. That's all. The resources, the gold, the diamond, the uranium, the lithium, and so on, the huge forest. If we exploit them, the benefits must come to the people of West Africa. West Africans have a right to choose their own leaders. And if we don't have that right now, we must use every and any means possible to secure that right. Let nobody tell us that some means are illegitimate or improper. They don't decide. The oppressor does not decide for the oppressed what weapons the oppressed must use in order to overthrow it. It is only the oppressor who is in a position to decide what methods and weapons it needs in order to come out of oppression. You know, this young leader from Burkina Faso has made a statement which has become very popular, and I endorse it. He says, the slave who does not revolt against his or her slavery does not deserve any pity. So slaves have a duty to rebel. Oppressed people have a duty to rebel. And those who suffer neo-colonial exploitation have a duty to themselves and to generations unborn to rebel using weapons and means that they decide, not what the oppressor decides. Finish.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome back. Always educative listening to you. We'll come to Gabriela shortly, but let me read a few messages from Facebook. A lot of people have been engaging. Sidonio Givanda says people are really stakeholders of their wealth or resources. There's Kakra Bedu who says, indeed, our leaders in Africa like President Akufo-Addo don't see anything wrong if those who do it are close to him. Clear example is when his daughter was on phone when the national pledge was ongoing. Same is in Nigeria, where Tinubu was quickly to withdraw the subsidies on fuel but refused to quickly respond to Boko Haram. Thank you for sending those messages. Audu Idris says, it is politicians, not leaders in the circles of democracy in Africa, is one of the major problems we are facing on this continent. The characteristic of politicians is the lie they tell. Lydia Boeku says, these current leaders of West African countries should go and read about the war in Liberia some few years back. The most painful aspect, which I want to know whether the Liberian president was there when this decision is being taken at all. I stand for correction. There's Kojofi Agwe says, Sena, do you know the Gao guys in town are so happy in support of the happenings in Niger? That's interesting. And he says all the right-thinking West African leaders are speaking sense, but Ghana is lost in water. Musa Abatua says, I'm not in any way supporting coup d'etat, but the unprecedented coup we are seeing today is as a result of corruption and mismanagement. For instance, what's happening under Akufo-Addo and Bawumia's government, where public office holders are keeping foreign money in their bedrooms, appears no different from what's happening in Niger. Those are some of the messages you're sending to us. There's several more messages I have to go through even on the WhatsApp platform. Seidu Kwebu says, an update. Magisal says he won't go for a third term. And he continues, Nigeria and EU both have economic interests in Niger. EU wants to replace Russian gas with gas from Nigeria, and the shortest route for the transmission is the pipelines passing through Niger to Europe. Discussions with Niger on this project has been ongoing, and both Nigeria and EU, sensing that the military junta is close to Russia, might pull out of the deal, want to bring back President Mohamed Bazoum, who is an ally of France and who supports the project. This is one of the many reasons. In continuous, President Tinubu of Nigeria is being groomed as a Western puppet. Already, ratings agency S&P only yesterday has upgraded Nigeria's credit rating from negative to stable. Is there any coincidence, especially with the stakes in Niger. Gabi.
This is a big one. Two things, actually.
Okay.
President Tinubu has withdrawn subsidies on fuel because he claims that the Nigerian economy is in a dire situation. Now, the gains that Nigeria supposedly is going to make from imposition of hardship on the people, he's going to spend it to throw bombs at Niger. So the people of Nigeria who are suffering from this withdrawal of subsidies, they should be left with no doubt that they are suffering because they are going to use those resources to go and bomb Niger. That's number one. Number two, these West African leaders who are clamoring for democracy and so on, they don't know that the legitimacy of the election of Tinubu has not been confirmed and that the matter is in court. They are so democratic that they hurriedly elected him as chairman of ECOWAS in spite of the fact that his mandate had not been confirmed. These are our leaders.
Thank you. Gabi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see
You're
all
welcome.
of you.
Yeah.
In a very short notice, but
Yes.
we thank God I still managed to make it. I think I haven't been here in quite a while, so thank you for the invitation. I want to associate, I didn't hear the first two, but I heard Mr. Pratt's submission. I would like to associate myself with a lot of his submissions. I mean, his analysis is spot on. So there's no need to go back and get into the nitty-gritties of this war. But there's something that I think the West African leaders are not taking into consideration in this whole attempt to cause a military intervention in Niger. You have two superpowers that are currently resident in West Africa. The US has an anti-terrorism outpost here in West Africa. Russia has a Wagner group here in West Africa. Now, our leaders are telling us that, and this morning Tinubu is seeking permission from the Senate to grant him permission to move an army. Tomorrow is the deadline on the course of intervention that West African leaders are going to take to address this issue in Niger. Now you have these two superpowers who already have their positions clear. The only reason they are both unable to intervene frontally is because Niger is still a sovereign country. So they are curtailed, sort of. An ECOWAS-led intervention is going to cause these two to take sides. Obviously, we know where the US is going to go to. France, we know, is going to come to join with ECOWAS because they see these colonies as still offshoots of their kingdom, quote unquote, of the nation of France. When you look at the possible humanitarian crisis that this conflict will create in the sub-region, it's going to cause us more harm than even what the terrorists are doing in the region. And I'm not sure that any of these ECOWAS leaders has a backup strategy to address that crisis when it happens. What's the population of Niger, Chad? Even today, with just an economic crisis in their countries, do you not see them on our streets begging for arms? They know how to come down south. Should anything happen and people start the exodus, they'll go to North Africa, they'll come to southern West Africa. And we are not equipped. Currently, look at our economic situation. So today, if you cause an intervention, an all-out war, and there's a crisis, you are going to put us in more dire straits than we currently are, having to grapple with mismanagement of our economies, with poor security, lack of infrastructure, and then on top of that, we now have a surge also in insurgencies. Mr. Pat brought in the Libya angle, which is very, very true. And that is something that the West has to live with for as long as Western Africa is in this kind of situation. Because even if you did not like Gaddafi, Gaddafi's strength was that he was able to put a handle on all these warlords who pledged their loyalty to him. Immediately Gaddafi was taken off. You gave all these ones a freeway, and today this is the consequences of those actions. And we, as West Africans, have to live with the consequences. For Western powers, this whole thing is nothing but an enterprise of war. Who profits from war? Do we manufacture ammunition? Are we the ones manufacturing armor vehicles? Should we have an all-out onslaught because of Niger in the sub-region? Who is benefiting? What is the U.S. defense budget when they go to war? Billions, trillions. And you African leaders think that that money is going to come to you to do what? Because you think that you are going to be the face of a war if there's a crisis. The approach that our West African leaders are taking is absolutely wrong. And I pray that Ghana does not follow suit on this agenda. They have to go back and seek mediation. Look, you are fighting terrorism. An army is fighting terrorism. You want them to now come and fight two wars, terrorism and ECOWAS, or whatever you are going to call your military intervention. You are not going to be able to focus the fight on the insurgents, and that is going to cause the insurgencies to rise, causing a terrible situation in our sub-region. So whoever has the minds and the heads of these leaders should just pump it into their head straight. And I think that citizens, if your leaders say that they are going to war for this thing, citizens should rise against their leaders. And I'm very happy with what is happening in Senegal. The youth are on the street, making it clear to their leaders that you are not going to intervene in this fight. There has to be another solution. All these three junctures, aside from Guinea, because their reason for going for a coup is different. But all these three junctures, Mali, Burkina, and Niger, have one single thing that preoccupies the need to take over power: terrorism. Terrorism, whether we like it or not, today, West Africa is classified as the epicenter of terrorism. We have seen what the fight against terrorism has done to the Middle East. And look at how rich the Middle East is, and yet look at how they are suffering in the Middle East because of terrorism. Now imagine you allow this thing to take a stronghold in the sub-region. Then where will we all be? What is our future as a sub-region when we've not even been able to address poverty, hunger, lack of social services? The very things that people were voted into power to come and do, we are unable to achieve it. But you now want to go and add another force which you can't even control into that battle. So that whole thing with the military intervention, whoever has the head of ECOWAS leaders should take it off the table. Citizens should rise against any such intervention. Another thing about the military intervention with a so-called United ECOWAS force. These Francophone armies, have you seen how these three leaders, have been able to govern, in fact the four, have been able to galvanize themselves in such a short time? These are all trained by France. They go through military drills together. They are familiar with themselves. Their armies know how they fight together. You, as ECOWAS countries, are now coming to move 2,000 here, 600 from there, 100 from here, this from there. Then you go and send them into a battle that they've never been synchronized and coordinated to even attempt trials against a contingent that is constantly training together. You are going to kill our men just because you want to boost your egos that when I was president, I led my country to war. Tinubu, I am not a fan of Tinubu. And I don't hide that I am not his fan. I don't like his leadership style. In fact, I don't like him in many, many ways. And I don't also like how somebody whose own election is in contention was made a chairman of ECOWAS by a group of people who appear are nothing more than a group of privileged people. And even when you heard his speech on Niger, he said, one of our own. As if it's some big boys club with special membership, and so one of the members of the club has lost his place, so we have to go back and reinstate him. without really looking at whether the man was popular or not. Mr. Pratt made mention of the Burkinabe leader and how he is so loved in Burkina. Sena, since this whole thing with coups started popping up, my phone algorithms is always showing me footage, especially raw footage, old files of coups that have happened all over the world, and it's even in Africa. When you look at how people love this young man, that kind of admiration is rare. People are referencing him to Thomas Sankara. I remember remnants of Sankara as a little girl when he came to Village Rollins or something like that, and then GTV carried it those days, and that was all I know of Sankara. But for people to find that they see, and Sankara is an icon in Burkina Faso. Upper water to Burkina Faso transition was Sankara. So if when people see that kind of icon in a new leader, and you think that because you are ECOWAS president, you can go and subvert people's wills, it's not going to happen. You are going to cause the people to now forge arms against ECOWAS leadership. And if you are not careful, what these leaders are going to do, there are going to be consequences of our own citizens who are in those countries. There could be reprisals on our citizens. There's one video I saw yesterday that popped up on my screen, and one of these young men in military camouflage, I don't know which army he was speaking from, and he was talking about how in the sub-region they've taken over Chad, Niger, Mali, Burkina, Guinea, Senegal is coming. In fact, they mentioned Ghana and they mentioned Nigeria in that video. So if you have wisdom as a leader, would you go and waste your resources, your time and your army to fight a war in somebody's country? That obviously is only going to benefit some westernized groups. Or are you going to sit in this country, Ghana, and protect your borders from the consequences of those insurgents? Because obviously your name is also there on their list. So you rather improve on your own national security. That's why you also have to praise President Atamils. Because in this particular context, Ghana stay out of any military intervention and rather opt for negotiations. My position is, it is better to pull all these new military leaders to ECOWAS. Tell them, today as it stands as a sub-region, we are dealing with a security threat. We are not military people. We are civilians who have become leaders. But you are the military people, and you have seen the consequences of when civilians lead a country and when you are leading the country. Help us to address the issue of insurgents in the sub-region, and let's clear them out before it becomes another pandemic in quotes, because I don't know which other word I can use to describe a surge in insurgency beyond what we already have, if there's a word they use for them, before it becomes a bigger threat to our sub-region. We have too many issues on our hands as a sub-region and as a country. Mr. Pratt mentioned that even the West Africa Monetary Unit, ECO, that we've been chasing for the past 20 years, has never been able to materialize. We have all these convergence criteria that we're supposed to meet. Every year they go for meeting upon meeting upon meeting upon meeting. And ask yourself, who will suffer the most if West Africa has a single currency? The people who manage and manipulate the central bank of the Francophone countries. Because they will not have access to their resources anymore. So why would they be interested in us having a common currency? That's the question, doesn't it? And these are the people that you want as ECOWAS leaders to go and push an agenda for. When you know that the thing that is holding the sub-region back has its roots firmly grounded in an era of colonialism. How will the sub-region rise? And then there's Ghana. Ghana is all over the place starting year of return. We are bringing the former slaves, descendants of the slaves back. We apologize for all that you had to go through as slaves, but we are welcoming you back to develop the country and the sub-region. But when another country, because they are fighting theirs differently, goes and says that I no longer want to be part of the colonial system with the French, and now I'm snipping myself off colonialism, you tell them we are going back to democracy. Let them deal with what they have to deal with. For me, I think what is happening to Francophone West Africa is just a sub-region and a group of nations that have realized that the poverty they are under is induced by an economic system that is not favoring them. And if they have to declare themselves from those strengths in order to address poverty, hardship, difficulties, let them go through it. It doesn't change who they are as Nigerians, what I call them, people from Nigeria, what? Nigerians,
yes.
Or Malians, or Burkinabes, or even Ivorians or Togolese. They are still who they are, but they want a certain level of liberty and freedoms to manage their own affairs. They are capable of that, and that is what they want. Let them go to it. And if you also realize what is really happening in these places, it is the youth that are driving this thing. I've seen the Burkinabe footage. I've seen the Malian footage when that one also happened. I've been watching the Niger footages. And I don't ascribe to some of the things the youth are doing, but you can see that clearly there's anger and a desire for a certain change for the youth. And they are the ones who are pushing the energy of what is going on. The one who overthrew this Niger president, he's a guard in his own palace. He's one of his own security guards. What does the man know that we don't know? What do those people know that we don't know? Probably a lot. And at some point, I think that they had probably had enough of whatever was going on with a leader who they felt, I don't use the word imbecile, but who they felt was just not worth leading them anymore. And of course they changed. West Africa leaders should rather be in support of what is going on in Niger, even if you don't like it. Be in support of it for the security of the sub-region, for the economic liberation of our sub-region. Would you not want to be a chairman of an ECOWAS that has a joint GDP over $1 trillion than a chairman of an ECOWAS which is impoverished, and every day all you do is to attend meetings upon meetings upon meetings, and nothing better comes out of it? And then there's this issue also about democracy and whether democracy is delivering for the sub-region. Democracy is not a philosophy in itself. Democracy is built on institutions that are aimed to achieve certain objectives. So if those objectives are not being met, then there's a problem with the democracy that you are practicing. Here in our context, we are having to deal with an issue of state capture. The institutions exist, but people are overriding the mandate of those institutions to do their own thing. And I know for a fact that because of the laws and how issues of accountability are done, in future, those people will be called to account for their tenure of service between 2017 and 2024, and how they have run down state institutions, and how they've manipulated state institutions, and how they are just bringing this nation down. Case in point is what is happening with the Bank of Ghana and the 60 billion cedi losses, which the Bank of Ghana had to absorb because of a debt exchange program. Never in the history of our country has a finance minister and a governor together caused such gargantuan loss to the central bank before and to the Republic of Ghana. 60 billion in 1 year. It is mind-boggling. Okay. And yet, let me land, and yet, there is no form of accountability that is enshrined in any of these laws against this kind of behavior. But somebody will have to take responsibility. And at the end of the day, Ghanaians voted for a president who went and brought all these hangers on to come and support him. So, Nana Akufo-Addo, whether he likes it or not, is going to have to account for why the Bank of Ghana suffered a loss of 60 billion through his debt exchange program. He, his governor, and his nephew or his cousin, Kenoforiata, and the vice president. Somebody will have to tell us why they should not face sanctions for putting this kind of debt on this country. When you were going for a DDEP program, economists told you that the Jamaica and the Caribbean example you want to go and adopt was not as flamboyant as you think it was. You renegotiated the debt, so which means that you're not going to be paying the debt, so you end up making savings. No. If you know what happened in the Caribbean when they went for that program, people lost their jobs, people were pushed into poverty, there was increase in hardship, economic difficulties, and that is exactly what you have come to replicate on Ghana with this strategy of going for a debt exchange program. So somebody has to be held responsible for it. Institutions must work. Accountability systems must work. That is how democracy delivers. If not, then what we are doing is not a democracy. Okay. It's just a remnant of vote, come, go, vote, come, go, vote, come, go, and nobody sees the end of any progress in our lives. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriela Tete. This is from Frank Goka, Sena. Please ask the panel for me if they are aware of AU's Agenda 2063, where they dream to unite the continent. Is that a joke? Well, this is the Kwame Nkrumah studio of Pan-African Television. We'll take a break. When we come back, we're talking about our precarious economic situation. We'll be right back.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer.
Hello, what are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those socio-economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And personality profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story from inspirational personalities. Hey, listen, you really cannot miss The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. Still, the only TV show with a hat.
He has labored, he has suffered.
Thank you very much for staying with us on the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, broadcasting live from the Kwame Nkrumah studio of Pan-African Television. Don't forget, we are live on Radio Gold. I can see lots of you engaging on Facebook, specifically, where we are broadcasting live. Thank you very much for sharing those comments and the ones that are coming to our WhatsApp platform. We have to move on to, we have 2 discussions to go. So each panel is going to have 12 minutes, and the 12 minutes will be spent on the 2 issues. First, the budget, the media budget review, and then the matter of the race within the new patriotic party. So each panel can decide which one they prioritize. And of course, I'll start with Solomon Owusu again on this one. He's been waiting for a while.
Sena, let me start off by dealing with the issue of the media budget review. I mean, there is not much to say about the media budget review, because the media budget review was a statement. Okay. You know, the government did not overspend its appropriation. Okay. for that matter. It only went to Parliament to account for what it has done so far, how we are operating within the IMF extended credit facility. I would say that between now until 2026, things will not move as fast as all of us would expect, because our budget will be dictated by the kind of agreement that we had with the IMF. We don't have that luxury of space to be doing things on our own. And that is why I believe as a country, we must have our own homegrown economics. We don't have to fall on what the economics textbooks that has been given to us by Deputy Wu says. Because see, a simple litmus test. If you read any economics book, it tells you that when inflation is going up, you just have to increase the policy rate. Now, I have never seen any country anywhere where policy rates are high and that country has ever developed. So it makes nonsense of the whole budget review, the budget thing that we always send to Parliament. Because when your policy rate is now hovering at 30%, it means lending rate to commercial banks, or by extension, lending rate to SMEs, will be hovering around 42, 43%. How would any business, I mean, has the Governor of Bank of Ghana, together with its management monetary policy committee, ever thought of it? That if they were going to borrow at 42%, would they ever increase productivity and by extension expand the economy? Because there is a correlationship between interest rate and revenue mobilization. Once your production or productivity is low, you cannot generate the much needed tax revenue to finance the various expenditure that you put in your budget. And remember, budget simply is expenditure and revenue. And if expenditure is a function of revenue. If you are not mobilizing revenue, you cannot expend. And so I find all these things very ironic. And that is why, as a country, we must always look at the best plan that is available. And I will refer you to the great transformational plan that Mr. Alhaji has put forward, which has the tendency of taking this country out of its quagmire. Else, it will be moving in circles. The same situation, we stabilize the indices, the macroeconomic environment, then there is nothing to fall on. We go back to the IMF, we are put under a cage, and then we operate within the same conundrum. So that is what I would say. Now I'll go back to the New Patriotic Party and what the president is supposed to have said, that as reported by Graphic on Thursday, the 3rd of August, at page 19, and I don't support any aspirant, says President Akufo-Addo. Let me use this opportunity to thank the teeming delegates of the Ashanti region who have been anxiously waiting for the next leader of the NPP and the next president of the land, Mr. Alhaji. I heard Gabriela, my sister, say that the next government will have to take on whoever has expended money recklessly or roughly. I mean, the next government will be led by Mr. Chamati. So we will deal with all nuances, be it within the NPP or without the NPP, because there are a lot of issues also with the NDC former appointees that has been left unattended to. You cannot have Sagleme sit down there and there is no issues, or there are no people who currently have been made to answer for those despicable acts.
But there's somebody in court.
What is court?
You don't believe in their own court.
200 million has gone into the drain, and you are saying there is somebody in court. You come there, when alarm comes, you see what you do. As for you, you can't do anything wrong. On Monday, the 7th of August, 2023, Mr. Alhaji will begin his tour of the Ashanti region and ends it on the 12th of August. It is not true that President Akufo-Addo does not have any candidate he's supporting. It is absolutely not true. The president of the land supports the vice president in total. You see, we must not be. You see, these are some of the things that annoys me the more. Look, as it is as a result of the president's support for the vice president that has emboldened the lives of the chief of staff, emboldened who is the regional chairman, emboldened the Greater Accra minister and his chairman, emboldened the Northern regional chairman, Samba, and a host of MPs to be following the vice president. But those of us who are with the Allen camp are very happy with the development. We are not afraid whoever is supporting the vice president. All that we are saying is that your support must remain support. You can give whatever resources you have to the vice president. But nobody must make the mistake of thinking that they can manipulate the election of 4th November 2023. I repeat, nobody must make that mistake. It's when people are not voicing out that loud, it does not mean anybody is afraid of anybody. It only means we are waiting for the appointed time to strike. And indeed, we will strike on the 4th of November. Indeed, the 210,000 delegates of the MPP who have seen that they fought for this party for only few people to enjoy will strike on the 4th of November. And so his support to the vice president is not something that worries us at all. No, not even a minute. But to tell us that you do not have a candidate is laughable. And ever since he made this statement, it has even increased the number of support for Mr. Chairman because they know what is going on. They know what is going on. That why all of a sudden you are trying to chicken out. In the same statement, when he was asked a simple question, he said his response was that, yes, I have a vote. Yes, I will vote. If you will vote, does it not mean you have a candidate that you vote for? Any candidate or any leader who does not support anybody will tell you, I will not vote. Because he has nobody to support. You heard my point. If you listen to those that are supporting the vice president, including the majority leader, the way and manner they openly go against the code of ethics of the party, it tells everyone that they enjoy massive support of the presidency. But you see, the NPP, like I keep saying, does not go to elections to elect who will be the flag bearer. It has never been part of our tradition. We only go to elections as a conference to think about who will take over from the obvious leader of the party. So now the contest of 4th November 2023 is about who will take over from Alhaji Martin when he leaves the scene. In terms of who is leading, there is no doubt about that. Because in 2007, 2010, 2014, all that the delegates who are going to vote on the 4th November told us was that, wait, when Mr. Akufo-Addo leaves the scene, you, Mr. Chairman, you will take over. So nothing has changed. Ghana has not changed to become Kosmokaya. NPP has not changed to become a new party. The configuration of our delegates has not changed. And the message has not changed. Especially when the country is at the crossroad. Especially when we are looking for a leader. And that is why issues to do with the economy, people must take it serious. And that is why I told you that military leaders have no business whatsoever taking over. As we speak today, within the MPP presidential primaries, tell me which of the candidates has presented any vision or plan. They have none. At least, if they had, they would have made the world to know. But we are talking about the leader who has put forward his GTP plan that is capable of solving the problems of this country. Whether you agree or disagree, there is a plan. So that you and I can pick the plan and peruse it and make our observations known to the world. None of them has it. So what makes anybody think that The delegates are going to leave a candidate who has put forward a plan, especially a plan and a message that has the potential of taking them out of poverty. People have worked for this party for several years. They have never benefited directly from this party. Few people. Few people. They are enjoying as though they are Arabian kings and queens. And that is not to say it is only limited to the NPP that does not have candidates that have no vision. The NDC to their flag bearer, no plan and vision. So it puts Mr. Alhaji ahead of anybody that wants to be president in this country come 2025. Now people are banging their hopes on super delegates on the 26th of August. That election is the most useless election you can ever think of. And the future, any future serious MPP must scrap it. Because those super delegates, and that is not to say, because if you say 10 people, you are going to reduce it to 5. What is the meaning of that? Probably the majority of delegates would have preferred to vote for the people that you will eliminate at the superdelegates level. So if you have qualified or passed the person as being fit to be president, why don't you present the person to the entire delegates to vote? So, Sena, I would want to end here by saying that, Mr. President, we have heard you, that you don't have a candidate. That is to you and to those that you spoke to. But I can say without any equivocation that you have a candidate. And your candidate is the vice president whom you will beat convincingly come the 4th of November 2023. Because the NPP has a spirit, and the NPP, no president can foist a leader on us, just like President Kufuor could not foist Alan Tremanti on the NPP. That you were crying in those days. There is absolutely no way President Kufuor can foist Bawumia, Vice President Bawumia, onto the NPP. I'll end my submission here.
Thank you. A few messages. Who says, I agree with Mr. Usu that President Nana Addo is supporting Bawumia because in a statement, he said, I have not come out officially to declare my support for a candidate. Kakabedu said that from Agona Soedu. Thank you. Haruna Jibril says he's watching us live from Wa. Humble regards to Senior Solomon Owusu for the brilliant submission 2023. Be bold for Alan and win with Alan to solve Ghana's problem. Kobla says, Solo, please, let us hear a word. After all, that is your party's modus operandi. Add all your flag bearers. Mahama shall stand out tall in 2024. Edward Dubaza, Solomon has forgotten that 1D1F now means 1 day, 1 fraud. How many scandals did we have in July? If you have not suffered enough, you can vote for MPP. Awini Gilbert says, Sena, I love the truthful way, I have the truthfulness of Solomon's submissions. The only MPP man with undoubtedly deeper honesty. No wonder you are the only one who appears on Pan-African TV. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. James Bauer says, what elephant leaders led by Akufo-Addo, Bawumia, Oforiatta, BOG are doing to this Ghana is more and far worse from what led to a coup d'etat in Niger. I'll jump to Gabriela, then I'll come to Honorable Abuba. Gabriela.
Solo, I can't be held responsible for your lack of interest in reading and listening to the NDC news. Our presidential candidate, our flag bearer, has already outlined his vision on countless occasions in the public domain. When he speaks, you choose to close your ears and just watch. We can't be held responsible for your lack of interest in that. Go and read, go and Google the Ghana we want, Ghana at a crossroads. There are so many speeches he's given on our policies for 2024. In any case, we're here to also do our manifesto. When we write our manifesto, you see all the good things we have for the people of Ghana. This economy that he's talking about, obviously, is nothing to write home about. So you see, he spent only 2 minutes on the economy of Ghana because he has nothing to say in defense of this administration. But I also let me at least give you one score. for your honesty on the policy rates and how government's policy on always hiking up interest rates is not going to help the private sector nor help the economy to grow if they want taxes. Sena, the media review was nothing but another sorrowful dirge to bury our already comatose economy that is only delivering on hardship, poverty, difficulties, challenges, and an economy that even when government comes to give an account of, will have to, because Ghanaians are so religious, we'll always have to intertwine it to remember verses, to remind us of our Bible school days, and not be even factual or on the actual hardships that is confronting Ghanaians. There was nothing in that midterm review that proposed any hope anywhere. The finance minister came and told us that the economy has turned the curve, the corner that he came to talk about. He himself, all the indicators he listed in the 2022 budget, the 2023 budget he read in 2022, he came and downgraded all the indicators. We were going to go at 3.5, then they brought it to 2.5 or something like that. Our reserves are down. I mean, there was nothing, aside the fact that he has to come and do this every single year in Parliament, there was no positive news in his midterm review. And so, unfortunately, I wish I could sit here and tell Ghanaians that between now to 2024, there's some hope for you. I can't tell you that there's any hope for you because I didn't hear of anything hopeful and any good news in that midterm review. The NPP elections. President Akufo-Addo says that he doesn't have a candidate. Let me remind Solo that he says he doesn't have a candidate. You people are saying he has a candidate. Were we not here in 2007 when you brought the 17 thieves, including a certain vice president? The vice president did not win the flag bearership. It was the Attorney General who won the flag bearership, or the foreign minister at the time. So in these things, anything can happen. But I admire your passion for Alan Chairmanti. You are a very loyal follower. Sena, 2024 is very clear. For us, our candidate is set. All the data that has, all the polls that has come out on pegging our candidate to whether Alan Chairmanti, whether Bawumia, has proven positive in our favor. When you look at the last info analytics poll that came out July, late last month, it does mention that whether you look at the demography of Christian Muslims or employed, unemployed, or male, females, or the youth or whoever, our candidate stands tall. In fact, the polls predict that in the election, we are not doing anything less than 54% with Bawumia, and we're not doing anything less than 52% with Alan Chairmanti. So for us, it is set and it is clear. 2024. The work is up to us to get the people of Ghana to look beyond the difficulties and the disappointments in political leadership because of President Akufo-Addo's bad governance and economic mismanagement, together with all his other appointees. You know, when the same interview that President Akufo-Addo said he didn't have a candidate, he also mentions that all the people who are contesting are all campaigning for change, right? But the change, all of them worked under him. And yet they are clamoring for change, forgetting that it is the same Osono party that has delivered on this current situation. So if you are going to contest and everything, your whole campaign message is change, change, change. When you yourself were part of this administration, how can you take yourself out of what is happening now in the name of change? Especially Alan Chairmanti. He was a cabinet minister. From 2017 to up until he resigned to go and do flag bearership, he was there with Akufo-Addo. Yeah. So if Akufo-Addo has delivered this hell for us, Alan Chairmanti was part of the hell. Bawumia, he's still sitting there as part of the hell, Mr. Strategist. So all the people that you've been presenting to us are all people who are part and parcel of the creation of the mismanagement of Naguna Akufo-Addo, Bawumia, Kenoforiata, Governor Addison, and the entire cabinet of Akufo-Addo that has brought us here. Ghanaians, all we can plead with you is that have faith in our democracy. 2024, let us go to the polls. We assure you that you see a different kind of governance, one that truly comes to serve your needs and delivers on the social contract. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We are happy.
Okay, first, let me say a big thank you to Shine FM in Akachi on 96.9, Hills FM in Adakula on 91.7, Nuwasi Radio Ketekrachi on 89.7, Sela Radio Dabala on 97.1, Diamond FM Tamale on 93.7, Bewa Radio Yendi is on 106.5, Radio Kitawa in Saboba on 95.7, Benya FM, Elmina 105.7, Global FM in Ho is on 105.1, Zeps FM in Zebila on 95.9, True FM, and others were 92.5, Lamar FM, 89.1, Tripoli, Boem, 88.7 FM in Jasican, Logosi Radio on 96.1, Virgo Lokwati, Tyne FM 90.9, and Sekwele 104.3 in Lipe. We are live on all the stations, and of course we are live on radio here in the Greater Accra region on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. This one says, hello, please give Mr. Pratt a handshake for me. He has made my day, and may God continue to bless him for Mother Ghana. Let me read a message from Tafa in Amahia, who sent a message earlier on this same matter. Sena, please tell Kwesi to relax and let our governments to go and remove these soldiers in Niger. But after that, after Niger, they must continue to Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and also ask those who change constitutions in order to stay in power to also resign immediately, because their actions had no difference from what the military are doing. That's Tafa in Amahia who sent that message. Jonas says the killing of Gaddafi by the West and the conspirators of some of the African leaders has brought this problem of insurgency in the Sahel region of West Africa. The least said by this so-called ECOWAS the better, because they themselves are candidates for coup. Okay, thank you very much for sending that message. There's Koblavi in Pokwasi Benghazi, who says MPP government is a lucky government for having peace in the Jubilee House, because in other parts of West Africa, citizens and military are throwing off their presidents because of corruption and stealing of state money. It is the same thing happening in Ghana, but we are keeping it cool. That is why Defense Minister Dominito is going around bragging that nobody can stage a coup in Ghana to overthrow our President Akufo-Addo's government. You should be careful, because anything can happen. Idi Gideon Montari says, my regards to your panelists, especially the incoming member of parliament for the people of Wale Wale, Honorable Buba. We are proud of him. My worry today in Ghana is that the government of the ruling MPP has taken Ghanaians for granted, considering that we are all stupid, fools, dance, and cannot read between the lines. Hence, their legendary recklessness, arrogance, and dishonesty. Instead of them appearing apologetic and candor, they are rather causing more provocations among the public by defending every stupidity to our detriment. That's what. Thank you very much for sending those messages. Babuwa.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Sena, and then thank you to my colleague panelists. For lack of time, I think I will want to go the reverse way, because the MPP presidential primaries is some issue that I really didn't want to talk about, because when a group of tortoises decide to go into a conference to choose an athlete for the Olympics, I don't think the Kenyan sports ministry should be worried, because whosoever comes up is not going to be able to offer any serious competition. Because a tortoise, no amount of training can make a tortoise a sports person. So whether Alan Chimantin, whether whosoever is emerging from that primaries, I don't think that the NDC should be perturbed, because they are actually, at the end of the day, going to pick an individual among failures to run against a time-tested, well-performed former president. And Ghanaians are discerning enough. So as far as the MP parliamentary presidential primaries are concerned, I don't think it is a matter that I should have been personally interested in, because it has no effect at all. However, I am forced to talk about it for some particular issues, because as a politician, I strive to get opportunities to serve the interests of my people. Of course, we are operating within the larger environment of Ghana, but within Ghana, I belong to a particular sub-region, which is the Northeast region, and then Wale Wale constituency, to be precise. I should be worried to hear His Excellency Nana Addo say that he is not supporting any of the presidential candidates among the lot. Why do I say so? First thing is, among all these people, none of all the contestants is a new MPP member. They've all been members of this party since Adam, and since the beginning, including Dr. Aprakwe and co. Of all these people, he saw my big brother, His Excellency the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, as the best out of them some years back to be considered as his running mate that he kept for so many elections until they won the elections. What has changed that Nana Addo seems to have lost interest and confidence in my big brother, Dr. Bawumia, that he's now publicly disowning him. And to have done that is only confirming my conviction that the MPP party does not in any way wish him well, except that they saw him as a tool to be used against His Excellency John Dramani Mahama in the previous election, being a northern brother. Today, if they are jettisoning him and claiming not to like him in public, for those people in Northeast region who are MPP, who have climbed mountains, walked in dangerous gardens because they felt that Bawumia's victory, Nana Addo's victory as a president was a victory for His Excellency, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Today, that same person, they fought us, the NDC in Northeast region for, has publicly disowned our big brother, the Vice President. And I feel sad for my MPP supporters in the Northeast region. And I think they will take a cue from this and make sure that 2024, they do not repeat the mistakes that they made. The second point that I really want to make in respect of this is that, look, the MPP at any point in time will brag and claim to be a democratic party. And when I look at the process, they're about to go into what they call an electoral college. Look, every poor individual in this country, the masses must understand that the MPP is not a party for the masses. Look, at the end of the day, whosoever they select as their presidential candidate is the choice of a few elite. Out of 10 candidates, they will first of all present these 10 candidates to the elite of their party, the cream of their party, the stakeholders, the key people, the poor market woman in Zebula, the market woman in Walawali, the poor farmer in Walawali constituency. It's not going to be part of the decision making to determine who becomes one of the five, that one of which must become the presidential candidate. Democracy in this particular case for me is to deny some people their franchise to determine. When you go into that Congress to select 5 out of the 10, the people who are going there to vote are the members of parliament, the ministers, and all those who are the elite of the party, who will have the opportunity to trim down the number to 5. The rest of the 5 who will be taken out, imagine a poor farmer who has been an MPP diehard several years, having the hope that a particular individual will serve his or her interest as a president. Will never get the opportunity to be even on the presidential primaries, the ballot. Simply because MPP is an elite party that will give premium to the decisions and the views of only the well-to-do in society. And I think that I didn't regret joining the NDC instead of the MPP, because I don't think that in my family in Walawali or the people of Walawali, up to 80% of the population in the area are elite. And therefore, a party that will discriminate against the masses definitely must not be entertained in a proper democracy. We move on. Look, the MPP as a political party today wants to pick a presidential candidate, and they are looking for somebody who they are hoping to be able to come and compete against His Excellency, former President John Dramani Mahama. And I was shocked to the marrow when my big brother mentioned that he will be the best candidate to beat His Excellency Dramani Mahama because he has beaten him twice. And I said, in which election did he beat him? Because I don't think he has ever contested even in any assembly election anyway. So his picture has never been on any ballot paper anywhere. So in which election did he beat His Excellency John Dramani Mahama? This is an analogy that we can link to a situation where a pregnant woman carries a baby and beats a man, and then the baby claims to have beaten the man. Because the contest was between His Excellency Nana Addo and His Excellency Mahama. And that is what they are doing to me in Walawali when it comes to parliamentary primaries and parliamentary elections. Instead of matching me as a candidate with their parliamentary candidate, they are quick to match me with the vice president because they believe that's where there's bigger leverage to be able to make meaning, to be able to get something out of there. So that kind of comparison, in my opinion, was actually uncalled for because he has never contested an election against former John Mahama. So I don't want him to begin to think that he wants to claim all the glory and victory that came along for Nana Addo. What about the failures? Today he is also preaching change, and everyone is preaching change. If Nana Addo had a very strong conviction that he, in partnership with my big brother, His Excellency John Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, had delivered properly for the needs of this country, I don't think he would have been disowning him. He would have wished him to stay, to perpetuate their good legacy. But today he has declared clearly that he's not in support of him. He's trying to let his legacy fall off like that, because the best person among the presidential candidates of the MPP to perpetuate that legacy that they feel they are so proud about is my brother, the vice president. So it beats my imagination to hear him say he does not support any one of them. But of course, there's always a de facto and a de jure situation. Openly supporting is different from being a supporter, because all the key people who will pursue an agenda in support of Nana Addo have all declared their support for His Excellency, the Vice President. And for him to come out clearly to say that he doesn't support him, then he leaves Ghanaians wondering what kind of partnership they've had all these years. Now, on the economy, Sena.
You have 4 minutes on that.
4 minutes. Yes, Sena, the issue of the MPP, and this economy, they've exemplified what I've always talked about, the arrogance of the untested. When His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was in power, and he received those very abusive criticisms from the then MPP candidates and all that, he thought of situating the conversation that any person who could criticize him to that extent should be somebody who should have had some kind of experiences to inform the criticism. So that was when he mentioned that, anybody who could say that would have been the former President Kufuor or President Gerald Rawlings. And people say he became a dead goat, and therefore he said nobody could criticize him. He was simply trying to say that, please be careful the way you criticize my performance, because you have never served in this position, and therefore you don't understand the realities of the position. Today, I think in their sober moment and in their private spaces, both His Excellency Nana Addo, the Finance Minister, and my brother, His Excellency the Vice President, would definitely be admitting to themselves that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was right, because in that occasion they were only behaving the way people would describe as the arrogance of the untested. Today, reality has dawned on them. Listening to the Finance Minister go through the budget review, I could not help it but to admire him. I really admire him for his ability, because he came across to me as a determined determined inspirational speaker who was trying to convince people in the middle of the night that it was daybreak at 12 o'clock. Because we are in this gloomy economy, the future is bleak. You come to tell us an antithesis of what you promised the people of this country. Antithesis, completely. You came to tell us that right just 6 months ago, when you were presenting the budget to Ghanaians, in your understanding of the functioning and the health of the economy, you are going to be able to grow this economy to about 2.8%. 6 months later, you are asked to come to Parliament to tell us what the outlook is like. You came to inform us that you were wrong. You thought you could do 2.8. I can only do 1.5%. And you turned to tell us we should clap for you because you have 10, we have 10, the country has 10. We have indeed turned the corner, but this one, to be honest, is a U-turn. It's taking us backwards from 2.8 expected growth to 1.5, and even that one, it is still a projection. And with some of the indicators that were explained in that budget statement, you realize that the 1.5 in itself, the achievement of it in itself, is something that we have to doubt, that I don't think they are going to be able to do it. Why? Look, if you look at their performance and look at all the macroeconomic indicators, the policy rate has been talked about already. My economist at the first degree level, University of Ghana, tells me that, yes, you can use monetary policy to check inflation because you do not want so much money to be in the system so that so much money will chase the fewer goods in the system. But you are the very person again who, apart from the monetary policy, because you have become a very bad partner at the international monetary market, the only convenient market for you to do what you want without being questioned is within the economy, the domestic economy. And because you have already impoverished pensioners, you've already taken people's investment, you refuse to pay them. You look in their eyes, refuse to pay them the money, and you turn to other new people to lend money from. Asking Ghanaians to give you money, according to the statement that was given, you realize that they've already borrowed 5.5 billion Ghana cedis in the first half of the year. And they're targeted to borrow 41 million extra at the end of the year. From who? If you check the document, they say from the domestic market. So you are denying the people money through the policy rate because they can no longer go to the bank to borrow because the interest rate will definitely be very high. And yet the little money they have on themselves to do businesses, you are promising them again to go and borrow that money from them, crowding out the private sector from the economy. And yet we all know that the best way to grow this economy is to encourage production. We have problems because our economy, the structural design of our economy is that our production process is a problem. We are not producing enough. So our private sector is not going to be able to produce because the finance minister for that time must borrow it and deny the money at the bank. And today we are talking about, and at the end he made a conclusion. When I read the conclusion, he talked about the fact that, they are going to continue to proceed this way because they have two strategies. One, they will continue to facilitate the ease of doing business. And then also, they will try to crowd in private investors. How do you crowd in private investors? You are crowding out private investors because you are competing with them in the financial space for the little money available to do business. So definitely, Ghanaian businesses are being starved of resources to do business. You are talking of getting private investors from external. Which external? Anybody beyond Ghana, you have a bad name. You are a very bad person who lends. You cannot pay that when you borrow. We are owing people who cannot pay. So how are you going to get the private investor with the kind of junk economy we have for them to come into Ghana to do business? So look, that is why I said, listening to him, I started thinking about that, the fact that the performance of the MPP is an antithesis to what they promised this country. Look, the Bank of Ghana, and I think the governor, alongside the finance minister, I know they are Christians. Governance is different from religion, but there are some interrelationship. They need to pray for the forgiveness of the pensioners. They need to pray seriously for the people who suffered their jobs in the so-called banking sector cleanup. Look, Christianity and Islam are similar in many places. Kullukum ra'i wa kullukum mas'ulun an rahiyati. Every one of us here on earth will account for whatever responsibility you are given over any person, either your wife, your husband, business, office, and all those things. And your inactions and actions that adversely affect somebody's welfare, particularly if it is deliberate, you must answer questions before you are God. So to close the bank that they did, it affected a lot of people's savings. A lot of people lost their jobs simply because they wanted to clean up the banking sector. Today, I am comfortable to say that the virus, the Ebola virus, that affected the banks that were closed, that virus, that Ebola virus is now sitting, the headquarters, the home, the bedroom is at the Bank of Ghana.
Please wrap up for me.
It is at the Bank of Ghana today. Because I have never heard. When I did comments at O level, did economics at A level, economics in the University of Ghana first degree, I have never anywhere come across a statement that the Bank of Ghana, the lender of last resort, the financial anchor of this country, the financial anchor of all the banks, is operating at a loss. And yet, these are the people who claim to be very competent. If your performance in the last 7 years can be described as the functions and the effort of competent people, I pray to God Almighty Allah never to make me a competent person, because that is not desirable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Abuba. Masala, probably in Ayawa, so he says the finance minister came to parliament last time to say a lot, but ended up saying nothing. By his usual rhetoric, whilst the economy still remains at its messy stage. The person start packing, because no matter what they will do, by hook or crook, they will be booted out of power next year, and there's nothing they can do about it. Mr. Pratt.
Now, first of all, I'm wondering why the mid-year budget review was presented by Mr. Ken Oforiatta. Because of the promises of the president, from the decisions of the party, from the responses to the NDC caucus and so on, it is clear that he ought not to be in office today. So what is it that is keeping him in office, given what his record is, and given what the public response has been to his tenure as Minister of Finance? I can't understand what is happening. You know, it is the NPP which has been telling us over and over and over again that they have the men. The continued stay in office of the finance minister belies that statement that they have the men. Indeed, what they're telling us now is that at least when it comes to the management of the economy, they have only one man. And that's a sad statement to make about their own party. One of the things that also shocked me was the absolute silence on the categorization of sanitary pads as luxury items. I mean, there have been protests, there have been demonstrations and so on about this categorization of sanitary pads as luxury items. And it obviously doesn't make sense to categorize sanitary pads as luxury items and to charge luxury taxes on them. But there was absolute silence. I mean, how do I explain this? The plight of a woman doesn't matter anymore. I mean, the consequences of the imposition of these astronomical taxes on sanitary pads. First of all, proper research has established that there's a rise in teenage pregnancy. It has been directly linked to the high cost of sanitary pads. Clear, I mean, there's proper research available on that. Medical research has also revealed that many women are suffering all kinds of sexual diseases as a result of the imposition of these taxes. You know, because many women cannot buy these pads anymore, it's too expensive for them. What are they doing? They're now going for Pampers instead of these sanitary pads. The doctor said that you can't wear them beyond a certain limit. And that if you wear them beyond, I think, 2 hours or so, they begin to infect, you know, and so on. So they are suffering from infections. Infections which may even lead to a situation where they can no longer give birth and so on. And they are not listening. I mean, the high level of taxation, the hardship and so on, we all understand. But this specific small problem which is likely to harm women, and women constitute the majority of the population. They are 52% of our population. And they are raising their voices. They're saying, stop this tax. Government is not willing to listen. The last time I joined the protest march to Parliament, and I heard the Speaker of Parliament himself lamenting seriously that this tax does not make sense. It is still there. And 3 days ago, I heard a member of Parliament on the NPP side make some strange argument, very strange argument, that if they remove the tax, it would affect local manufacturers. I mean, very strange argument. Where is the evidence? The local manufacturers are manufacturing these parts and are not being bought because, you know, the foreign ones are cheaper than the local ones. Why is that? In any case, if government wants to step up local manufacturing of sanitary pads, start it! What are you waiting for? Strange arguments. Sometimes you wonder, you know, first of all, you wonder, you have to be careful sometimes, you know. Sometimes you wonder, I mean, what schools did these guys go to? What schools? And what kind of head do they have on their necks to make such arguments? But that's one part of it. I mean, the point really is that the media review does not provide us with any hope that things are going to get better any sooner. I'm very, very worried because all the indications are troubling. All the indicators are troubling. All the indicators exceedingly troubling. And I'm wondering what the state of the economy is going to be by the end of this year. I mean, already, the price of kinky is now 5 cedis a ball. Not a big ball. A ball like this, 5 cedis. You know, and I was wondering, I mean, if there's a family, first of man and wife, and 3 children, and let's say that each one of them is going to eat 1 ball of the kinky. I know a guy who eats 6. 6. He alone, when he sits down, he will clear 6.
He still does.
Ah, my friend, what are you talking about? And he will clear 6. Okay? But let's say that each one of them is going to eat 1 ball of kinky. That is 25 cedis per 1 sitting just for the kinky alone. The tomatoes has not come. The pepper has not come. The onion has not come. The fish has not come. 25 cedis. What is the daily minimum wage? After eating in the morning 5 balls of kinky, which is at the very minimal, you understand? Because even me sometimes, the 5 CD kinky, I can deal with 2. And I don't eat at all, you understand? I'm not considered as a big eater. So, morning alone, if you calculate, before the man leaves the house to go to work, 50, 60 cedis is gone. Daily minimum wage is how much? 14 cedis or what is it? 14 cedis. So this is the state in which our people find ourselves. And then the finance minister comes and is standing there and is quoting the Bible. I say, my goodness, why are you destroying the Bible? Because we are quoting the Bible to support this mess. Who will go to church again? After when you listen to the finance minister, you don't feel like going to church again. Do you feel like going to church? Because it destroys the whole thing. That the economy has now turned the corner and it is the work of God and Jesus. Jesus and God, is this what you can do? What is this? You are messing us up. Okay, no problem. We will take it. But you want to go and mess Jesus and God up too. What is this? There's so much to be said about it, but let's put that aside for now. The other issue is the internal contest of the NPP. And Sena, for the president, for His Excellency the President, to call a meeting in the full glare of the media to deny that he's supporting some candidate, it means there's something there. It's not for nothing that the president actually called the meeting. He didn't even sit down. He stood up behind the podium and addressed this gathering in the presence of the media and said he's not supporting anybody. Hey, what is happening? You guys may know what is happening. I don't know what is happening. What is pushing the president? And he was so emphatic. One thing he said, which got me thinking, was that he was accusing his party members of not appreciating their achievements. That you people, you are part of the party, and you say that we haven't done nothing. Why are you doing that to us? The president is saying that his own party doesn't think that he has done well. Now, if people in his own party don't think that he has done well, who do you think thinks he's done well? Me or you? There's the president complaining, oh. I didn't see anybody putting a gun to his head. His own free will, standing in front of television cameras and lamenting that his party people don't see his achievements. His party people think he has achieved nothing. Hey, Ghana, MPP, what is happening? Then I'm also wondering, how is Alhaji Timothy Bawumia going to take this denial by the president? There's a lot of people have rallied to his support on the assumption that he is the establishment candidate. Now, if he's not the establishment candidate, if even his boss cannot endorse him, what does that do to his chances? I'm not sure. You understand? I'm not sure. I spoke to somebody, and I'm not going to mention his name. Even if you put a gun to my head, I'm not going to mention his name. I spoke to somebody who is serving in this administration, who has been going on all the vice president's trips campaigning. I said, my brother, why are you doing what you are doing? He said, hey, I have to play safe. He told me that he has to play safe. Why? Why does he have to play safe? It feeds into this idea that Dr. Timothy Bawumia is the establishment candidate. Now, it's also clear that the establishment itself is not popular in the party. But you see, my brother said something which is very interesting about democratic practice and so on. They're going to have delegates of up to 900. They may not be up to 900. The maximum level is 900 delegates. I'm going to look at 10 contestants and select 5. And now present them to more than 200,000 delegates to choose one. Now, simple mathematics indicates that it is possible for somebody to get 90% of votes at this level and get less than 5% at the bigger level. Simple mathematics indicates that it's possible for somebody not to be selected amongst the 5 who could have been the popular choice, and so on. Now, how the NPP deals with it is their own business. But what they've done, the arrangement they have done, is such that it is possible that at the end of the exercise, the popular choice may not emerge. The popular choice may be thrown out. So what does this do? It means that the 900 people who more or less are the elite of the party, the creme de la creme of the party, will be dictating a candidate to the delegates. I'm not very comfortable about it. But first of all, I'm not a member of the New Patriotic Party. And secondly, I don't know how to correct this mess. So I'll keep my mouth shut.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a few messages. This is Kipo Elijah Bakari, who says, at the time Ghanaians are struggling to survive, the government is in an arrogant corruption. The bedrooms of individuals have money more than the entire consolidated budgets of one municipal and one west districts. Fuel prices were recently increased to so the MPP should always use their time to beg for forgiveness. That's coming from him. Thank you for that message. Positive Change in Medina says, it's pathetically delusional and emotionally unstable for any reasonable Ghanaian to believe that the economic fundamentals under Kufuor and Ken Ofori-Atta is better than that of John Mahama. He sent that one. Thank you very much for that message. Habib Bantus says, nobody like coup d'etat, but what's the use of democracy when millions of our people can't find 2 square meals a day? How much is a ball of kinky today? what is the use of democracy when poverty is being unleashed on the people? Property owning democracy where majority of the people wallow in abject poverty and selected few amass wealth beyond imagination. Thank you for that message. There are several other messages that I have to go through, but we have to end it here. And of course, you watch the Mother of All Talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, which broadcasted live from the Kwame Nkrumah studios of Pan-African Television. It was live on Radio Gold. It was live on our social media platform, Pan-African Television. Thank you very much for joining us, sharing your comments with us and being part of the show actively. Let me say a big thank you to Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr. Nice to see him. It's always wonderful to have him in studio. He is General Secretary of Socialist Movement of Ghana. And of course, a big thank you to Gabriela Tete. I called her 2 hours to the show because Hajia, who was supposed to have been on the show, fell sick. And Hajia, who wishes speedy recovery, Hajia Zuera Ibrahima, who is a member of parliament, was supposed to join us. So a big thank you to Gabriela. And a big thank you to Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the MPP's communication team. Always wonderful to see him. And Mr. Abdallah Abubakar, who is the NDC parliamentary candidate for Wale Wale, joining us for the first time today. Honorable Abuba, nice to have you on the show. Let's say happy birthday to the minority leader of Ghana's parliament. We understand he turns 45 today, Dr. Kesel Ato Forsen. A happy birthday to you. And of course, extend our well wishes to Honorable Kobina Minta Akando, who was involved in an accident somewhere last weekend. He's still recovering. Speedy recovery to you. Speedy recovery to you. And let me conclude by saying a happy birthday in advance to Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We are back same time next week with another edition of the show. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a fruitful week. That's very important. And do meet us here.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people.